Good morning. Will the Committee on Zoning please come to order? At this point in time, I would like to welcome the committee members. Councilwoman Cordero, Councilman DeSantos Tan, Councilwoman Kiaina, and Councilman Wire. Although remote oral testimony is being permitted, there is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under Hawaii Revised Statute Section 93-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue notwithstanding the loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways. First, remotely, and secondly, in person in the council chamber. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up in the following order. First, it will be remote testimony, once more remote testimony, and second, the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they are testifying on. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or by phone will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. The following are some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you're called to testify. 3, when the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. For those of us who are joining us by telephone only, please press star 9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number, and when your number is called, please press star 6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will then proceed into the in-person testimony in our council chambers. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. And at this time, for the announcement, there are those who will be providing verbal testimony on Resolution 24-226 and Resolution 24-227. Please note that your testimony will be limited to comments on the extension of time. We will not be taking up the resolution as far as its substantive matter, but it is only for the discussion if you agree with the extension or deny the agree of the extension of this resolution. Also, please note that action item number 2 has been canceled, so Resolution 24-232, accepting a gift to the city valued from the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, has been canceled. Okay, let's proceed on, members. Moving on to agenda item number 1. Resolution 24-209. This resolution confirms the appointment of Mr. Ryan Toyomura to serve on the Zoning Boards of Appeal and the City and County of Honolulu for a term to expire on June 20th of 2026. Here before this committee is Mr. Ryan Toyomura, the appointee to the Zoning Boards of Appeal. Mr. Toyomura, are you here? Oh, press the button. There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Council Chair Waters. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you today as you consider my addition to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I also want to thank Mayor Blangiardi and the administration for giving me this opportunity and the appointment. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, so feel free to ask.
Okay, members, any questions for the appointee? Council Chair? No? Councilwoman Kiaina? Councilwoman Cordero and Councilman Wire. I believe I believe the two of you, Chief, may have a conflict.
Why is that?
He's a Mid-Pacific grad like you.
That's true. But in addition to that, very grateful for his willingness to serve and the expertise, Ryan, that you're going to bring to the table. So mahalo.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If there is no further discussion, thank you very much, Mr. Toyomura.
Thank you very much.
At this point in time, Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. We will now go to the in-person testimony. We will now proceed with the in-person testimony, Madam Clerk. Do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, we are now in discussion on the appointment of Mr. Ryan Toyomura. If there is no further discussion, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 24-209 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Congratulations, Mr. Toyomura, and best wishes for your appointment to the Zoning Boards of Appeal. Who's that guy next to you? That guy? Okay. He looks like a long-time lobbyist. Mike Sakito? Okay. Members, moving on to agenda item number 2 has been canceled, and this is the resolution accepting a gift to the city valued at $6,160 from the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials. Okay. So that has been canceled. Moving on to agenda number 3. Resolution 24-215, and this resolution adopts a revision to the public infrastructure map for the Central Oahu Sustainable Community Plans area to add a symbol for a water reservoir in the vicinity of the H2 Interstate Freeway at the foot of Waiava Ridge in Pro City. Members, at this point in time, we're very honored to have Manager Ernie Lau or his appointee or representative, Ms. Kathy Mitchell, to testify. Before we continue, introduce Chair Waters and Councilwoman Val Okimoto. You just came right on time. Is this part of your district, Central Oahu? Waiava Ridge? I don't know. Okay, go. Please proceed, Ms. Mitchell.
Good morning, Chair Say, Chair Waters, and members of the committee. My name is Kathy Mitchell with the Board of Water Supply. We support Council Resolution 24-215, and we're available for questions. I have Dominic Diaz, engineer with the Water Resources of BWS, if you have any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for the Department of Board and Water Supply? So, Chair, the Chair has a question. Ms. Mitchell, there's a reason why this particular site has been chosen. And can you give us the reason why this particular reservoir is needed as a public infrastructure map?
Yes, by adding the symbol, the water reservoir symbol to the public infrastructure map, it allows for the appropriation of funds for the construction of the Waiava 228 reservoir facility.
And will that particular future reservoir be in anticipation of further growth in that area of Central Oahu?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Will this particular reservoir then anticipate the growth in Central Oahu?
The addition would be for reliability.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Any further questions? Councilwoman Okimoto, any questions for the board? Nope, okay, let's proceed on. We have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna, Director. Anybody from DPP? Oh, there's Liz. Tina. Please proceed, Dina. Oh, press the button. Andrew, can you help her? Andrew, can you help her?
Okay, good morning, Chair Say, Chair Waters, and members of the Zoning Committee. I'm Dina Wong. I'm Chief Planner for DPP's Planning Division, and we are in support of Resolution 2024-215, which recommends approval of the Board of Water Supply's proposed revision to the Central Oahu Public Infrastructure Map for the Waiawa 228 Reservoir Facility. Placing the symbol, as Kathy mentioned, will allow the Board of Water Supply to have funds appropriated in the budget in future years for acquisition and construction. The reservoir facility in the Waiawa area will offset a deficit, a storage deficit in their Metro Low system, which is also identified in the Board of Water Supply Water Master Plan. If there are questions, there are staff from Board of Water Supply here and their consultant to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Wong? Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Santos.
I wanted to ask, this is not about the merits of this water reservoir, proposed water reservoir, but this is about the public infrastructure maps in general. Pursuant to ROH 4-8.1, the City Council shall, when making any land use decision, take into consideration symbols that are shown on the public infrastructure map. And so I wanted to ask when the department plans to do an overhaul or a review of all of the symbols shown, because as my office's research has found, there are a number of symbols on there which refer to projects which have either been completed and thus we don't need to take into consideration, or were canceled. And a few that come to mind is the Hotel Street subway, which goes through my district, which I don't think we're ever going to build. And it was sort of a thought in the 80s. And the acquisition of 1 Kapiolani Boulevard, which is where TJ's is now, that was canceled in the Eileen Anderson administration. And so it's still on the map, and I'm sure there's others around the island. Is there a plan to give an overall review of all of these symbols so we can really focus on the things that we actually are going to build?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In the past, we would annually send out memos to the line agencies, and we defer to them on whether they want to keep the symbol on the map or remove the symbol. We've stopped doing that in the last few years, but we do plan to restart that because I understand there's a lot of symbols that maybe are no longer needed.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions? Ms. Wong? I'm looking at our findings of fact. One of my concerns is subsection 3 of B, and this is in the findings of fact that the proposed project site was involved in a state land use boundary amendment. Docket number A87-610, approving urban uses for a majority of the parcel. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a state land use boundary amendment that covers this site, but where the reservoir facility is located is not in any of the areas that are planned for development.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the department? Ms. Wong, thank you very much for coming. I think we should need you to come more often so that you know how to press the button. I'm only kidding, Dina. I'm only kidding. Don't worry. Okay, anything? If not, let's move on. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Great. And now we'll proceed with the in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Members, we are now in discussion in regards to Resolution 24-215, which is a PIM, a public infrastructure map designating the water reservoir for BWS. So the councilwoman from the area, are you okay with this particular PIM? Okay, great. So at this point in time, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-215 be reported out for adoption. Any discussions, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much. Okay, the next two items on our agenda are to approve extensions of time only for Resolution 24-227 and Resolution 24-226. Verbal testimony will be limited to comments on the extension of time only. Moving on to agenda item number 4, this resolution approves a conceptual plan for an interim plan development transit project to redevelop 56,250 square feet of land zone BMX3 Community Business Mixed Use District within the Ala Moana Neighborhood Transit Oriented Development Plan area with a mixed use project located at 1659, 1661, 1663, 1665, 1667, 1673, 1677, 1679, and 1681 on Kapilani Boulevard and 1646 Kona Street, as identified as tax map key 2-3-041:003 and 004. Members, for your information, the written request for the 120-day extension of time is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 410 of 2024. So at this time, we would like to call upon the applicant and its representative.
Good morning, Zoning Chair Say and members of the Zoning Committee and other City Council members. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Isaiah Sato and I work with RM Tao Corporation. We're here to request an extension of time for this process. So we're requesting a 120-day extension of time to allow the council, the applicant, and the DPP to adequately review this complex project there too. For this extension, we want to make sure that council is going to have time to have a public hearing, which I know you guys often do with IPDT permits, as well as to address some of DPP's concerns, that came out of their director's report. So we'd just like to thank the council and DPP, and we're requesting 120 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the applicant? Councilmember DeSantos Tan.
Isaiah, thanks for joining us. I understand, there's existing businesses on this site. Has the applicant communicated sort of the timeline to these businesses? I know there's kind of relocation and other things. Think about Akasaka in particular.
That's a good question, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. And yes, the applicant has discussed this with their businesses. I mean, as you guys may be familiar, they've been hoping to redevelop this site for a few years. So we've been in communication with the on-site businesses at possible relocation.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions for Mr. Sato? No questions. You have a question? No, okay. At this point, members, any other questions for Mr. Sato? I have a couple of questions, Mr. Sato. What are the reasons behind the extension? You've already had 4 years. What is the reason behind the extension when you already have 4 years under your belt?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons. One reason is IPDT permits, they have 60 days from when it's received by council, which was the beginning of September. And that 60 days, council, generally in the past, we've seen it going to zoning committee, to a public hearing, back to zoning committee. So there's usually at least 2 months there. So it's very, I guess, typical that we've seen to ask for extensions for TOD, permit approvals. The other part is that we want to see how we can address some of DPP's concerns that came out in their director's report in the early September there too, and see what we can incorporate into our project moving forward.
Okay. Thank you very much for your response. So you're saying that the 120 days will give you time to address the compliance issues that DPP has forwarded to the applicant, correct?
Yes.
And if within that 120 days there is no changes to the plan, conceptual plan, what then?
Well, we plan to make changes. I've met with the owner and the design architect, and we're seeing how we can make some changes in our design, potentially look for more affordable housing to fit into the project site, and just see what works with the pro forma as well.
So would you recommend that council members say, then give you a blank check that I don't know what the conceptual plan will be? When you're now making a request that it may be part of an expansion of meeting the requirement of the 5% community benefit package that was adopted many years ago, what guarantee do you have that I should give you the extension at this point in time?
So we are working on our design, and we will submit a new or improved design for your review and consideration at that time. We're not asking for approval at this time. We're just looking for some additional time at council so that we can really look at DPP's changes, see what we can incorporate, work with the department and council to see if this is a project that we want to move forward, and how we can make a project that's good for everybody, for the developer as well as the city, as well as the people.
Okay, thank you very much. Very well taken. Councilwoman Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Mr. Sato. I have a question as it relates to the time needed to address the design conditions that may change that the applicant needs to consider. Would it really take the 120 days? Because I do think that this developer has been here before, before 5 at least, or 6 at least, of the council members currently on the council prior. The conditions of the TOD zone, although not yet approved during that time, or just approved during that time, were pretty much the same. So to come before with certain designs and requirements that don't meet certain affordable housing, transit, flexibility, or I don't know what we would call it, but reliability in its design is something that should have been already presented in its application to DPP. So.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Cordero. And one thing I didn't mention with their extension request is we're actually hoping to submit as soon as possible, within the next few weeks. The 120 days, we asked for a little bit extra, just knowing the end of the year is coming and how January meetings might be. So we wanted to just make sure that we had enough time to get on the council meetings within the 120 days. So it'd go from the beginning of November to the beginning of March.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Sato? If not, Council Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you give us a procedural history of this site and this particular developer?
Sure. So the developer came to council back in the 2018, 2019. Well, actually, before they came to council, went to DPP with a previous project. And at that time, it was a condo hotel component. I think a lot of you guys are very familiar with that. At that time, we didn't go completely through council. At some point, we kind of stopped and then let the project, die out there. And then we went back and saw what we could do to incorporate some of council's comments, some of the community feedback we have. So since then, we've completely got rid of the hotel portion. It's a fully residential project. Over the last few years, they've looked at different potential avenues to go to develop this project. They looked at 201H at one point, but then decided that TOD was, the best way forward for the project. So more recently, last year, we came to the council in August as an informational briefing to the zoning committee, presented the project, went to the neighborhood board as well. That same month in August, presented the project as well, submitted to DPP after, looking at some of the comments that we got back, and then that's kind of where we're at now. So we did submit in the past through the TOD permit, pulled back the project, did a redesign, and then now we're here.
Is this the second redesign, though? I thought what was presented to the council a few months back was different than what's presented today?
So this was overall, since the early 2018, 2019, it's been completely redesigned since then. When we're looking at a 201H project, we did do a design, but that didn't get out public or out to council at that time. And since for the most recent project, we started with the design, we actually met with DPP, brought our liner down a few floors. There's a lobby that was only accessible from the porte cochere, so we made sure that was connected to the main road. So we did incorporate some of the feedback that we got from DPP, and we're looking to see what else we can incorporate from the most recent feedback that we got in the director's report.
Thank you. And can you remind me, was this the same project that created a wind tunnel between the next door neighbor property? Remember there was that issue?
Yeah, so in the last iteration, there were some concerns about wind with the neighboring property, which is on the convention center side of the project, is the Manaolana Place development there. So there was wind concerns. In the last draft resolution, it indicated that we'd update our wind study. In the current draft resolution, this iteration there, they do talk about incorporating, any design changes into an updated wind study. So we got a new wind study for this application. DPP had some concerns. If we make changes, we're going to get that into an updated wind study as well. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions for the applicant? Yes, Councilwoman Cordero.
Thank you. Mr. Sato, I know that you're going to know what I'm going to ask now. Can you take a guess?
Is it about parking?
Yes, it's about parking. How close are we to the closest possible future station?
So we're very close. So the proposed station is along Kona Street, I guess kind of like halfway through Ala Moana Center. We're closer to the end of Kona Street, closer to the convention center, but we're really right down that street, less than half a mile, very good walking distance there.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking at the communications right now, but would you be able to share if the DPP's report had any comments about the amount of parking provided by the current design of the project?
Yeah, so the current project proposes 631 residential units, and the parking, we kept it under the 1.25 TOD ratio, so about 780 stalls. Their DPP, in their draft resolution, didn't have any specific comments on parking, although they did have comments on the height of the parking podium, and my understanding was if the podium height was reduced, they'd anticipate the parking to be reduced as well, but there wasn't a specific condition related to the number of parking in the draft resolution.
Okay, and that probably would be because within the TOD plans, it already has certain no minimum or maximum, right, for parking.
So the Ala Moana TOD plan recommends a 1.25 ratio on the maximum there. So we're just like right at that ratio.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair. Any further questions? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Sato. At this point in time, I'd like to call upon the Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Elizabeth Krieger, Chief Planner of the Land Use Permits Division at Department of Planning and Permitting, here for Director Apuna. We support the extension of time request. And I have staff here to answer any questions you may have about the DPP's report or anything else.
Okay. Okay, go right ahead, Councilwoman Cordero. Keep it within the
I know. I understand. I know that this is regarding the extension of time. And so would you recommend either a shorter extension of time for the requests made in the report?
The 120 dadays is what they're currently requesting, and you're asking if I think that the extension should be shorter?
If the department...
I'm personally ambivalent about the amount of time, just because when it comes to committee, we'll be ready to talk about it. And we have not heard back yet from the applicant with, say, a redesign or a point-by-point response to any of the elements of our report. So I don't, to us, it doesn't matter much whether it's 60 days or 120.
Okay. All right, and what are the steps then to ensure that you keep the applicant, I guess, in check to possibly meet at least some of the conditions in the report for the extension of time, to meet the deadline of the extension of time?
We don't have any mechanisms at present to get them to submit anything to us. In just procedural terms, they don't really need to be discussing anything with us. Okay. Whatever is in the agenda, we will respond to that. If they do interact with us, then all of that still needs to be discussed at the committee hearing. So it isn't a comfortable situation to be in, to have kind of changing plans on the fly in any amount of time between committee hearings, but I think that's one of the reasons that our report emphasizes the specific development guidelines in the TOD neighborhood plan for that area, as well as the TOD, special district standards, and why we wanted such significant design changes.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Thank you.
Members, any further questions for the department? So my first question, Liz, is did the applicant be aware of all of the concerns that DPP has in regards to the project's design, and also the need for the affordable housing units as a community benefit?
Yes, I believe that the applicant was aware of the DPP's concerns. We had pre-application meetings with them in which we identified the design elements that were of concern to us. And of course, the affordable housing component is a primary discussion point for any of these interim plan development transit projects. And so we have the discussion about ROH Chapter 29 compliance, that's the affordable housing strategy, as well as the requirements for the TOD plan. So those discussions happened early.
So the applicant was aware of all of the department's concerns, correct? Even the podium?
Yeah, I believe that we made our concerns, especially about the podium and about that housing facade along the front of the structure. We made our concerns about that known early. I'm sure there were some other elements of our report that were more detailed, that were based on our detailed review of their plans.
Okay, and final question that I have was, will the applicant address these concerns?
The applicant will have to address any conditions of the resolution. Okay. So how the applicant proceeds depends a lot on whether the city council passes a resolution, and if they do, what the conditions of approval are.
Okay. I think the chair is just questioning the report that we have today that you have presented to what was submitted originally. Nothing has changed. That is the concern. Nothing has changed in addressing our community benefits, our affordable housing package, etc. And that's why I'm posing these very difficult questions, because this particular project has been on the books for how many years now? 4, 5 years? 6 years? I was not here when this particular project was discussed. I think okay, just Chair Waters was here. Okay. So, okay, the department is willing to give them 120 days. If there's a wide variation from what the submittal is and what will be resolved, shouldn't they just not just forget about this project and go back to the drawing board?
That's up to the discretion of the city council at this point.
Okay. So you
And-
folks all recognize that? Yes, please.
And just to explain, from the department's perspective, if we had received an application that we thought was not supportable at all, we could have recommended denial to the city council, but it still would be up to the city council to evaluate and make its own determination through the resolution. So in this case, we didn't find that denial was necessarily warranted, but you're right, we did find that significant design changes would be necessary for us to be able to make the finding that it met those criteria for the interim plan development transit permit.
And one final question for me, Liz, is the fact that I'm not a developer, but I'm really learning a lot this past 4 years. The question would be if this particular resolution is denied, doesn't the developer have the opportunity of going back to the drawing board and complying with all of the requests that was reflected in the reports that the city council requested and DPP?
Yes, that's true. And that is what happened last time, that they came through with an interim plan development transit permit application, and the city council did not pass a resolution approving that project. So the project was essentially, it ran out of time and therefore was deemed denied.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers. Okay, members, any other questions? If not, let's proceed on. We will now have remote testifiers. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Next, let's move on to in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Great. So members, we are in discussion, but let me just state for the record. The chair notes that the Department of Planning and Permitting has recommended several conditions requiring the applicant to redesign the project to comply with the podium height limits, height setback requirements along Kapilani Boulevard, the tower separation setback requirements, and maximum tower width requirements. The conditions also require the applicant to provide additional affordable units as commensurate to the community benefits to offset the big bonus height and density being approved by the project. The applicant has indicated that it will not be able to move forward with the project if these redesign conditions remain in place. The applicant is also considering the possibility of providing additional affordable units off-site at a location other than the project site. Given these circumstances, for me, it would have been better for the applicant to withdraw its current application and resubmit a new application to the Department of Planning and Permitting for a redesigned project with a revised plan to provide affordable units as a community benefit. The DPP could then review the new application and make a recommendation back to the council. So right now, members, I am leaning towards denying this particular extension and having it come back as a new application. Your thoughts? Each and every one of you, your thoughts on it. Councilwoman Cordero, please.
Well, I was going to vote with reservations if we were going to go with the 120 days or ask for less time, and hope that they take the comments from over the past few years. That's where I was going to land. But also, I was definitely wanting to just not give them an extension either. But either way.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember DeSanto-Stan, please.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my concern is that, we could give them 120 days. to continue on this, or, as a new application. I'm just not sure what we would get as a new application if all they're going to do is submit the exact same thing, and we're going to be in the same position 120 days from now.
Yeah, your point is well taken, but if they're not complying with the requirements of what DPP and what the council wants, they shouldn't be submitting anything.
And I guess this gets to kind of a bigger question. Every time we get some of these applications, DPP puts in their conditions, we put in additional conditions, and it seems to some degree a little arbitrary that we ask for a certain number of bike share stalls in one project and a slightly different number in a different project. And I wish there were a way to standardize these things so that it is clear to all applicants what we expect, what the community expects, and what the commensurate benefits would be. But I'm happy to support the recommendation of the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilwoman Kia Aina, your thoughts? You're part of the zoning committee also.
Well, can I ask a question of
Yes.
the applicant?
Please. Mr. Sato?
So based on what the chair is recommending, I guess my question to you is, what impact is it to you and the firm with regard to resubmitting a new application versus modifying the application to meet the conditions of DPP? What would be the difference, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the application process itself, it starts with coming to the zoning committee. So we'd probably come back with a new project here as an informational briefing. Simultaneously, we'd go to the neighborhood board. Then once we submit to DPP, it's another 3 or 4 months at DPP. So it would slow down the project process quite a bit that way. Can I explain a little bit?
But wait, I'm not finished yet. So what, I know that Councilmember Cordero asked, but can you explain to me again what took you guys so long? You had 4 years? Is that the total? What took you guys so long to address the concerns raised by DPP?
Yeah, so that, as Liz mentioned, that project timed out at council. So we went back to the drawing board. We kept operating as a commercial business, and we looked at potential redevelopment opportunities at the site there as well. But Councilmember, can I explain a little bit about the reasoning for our design and why we submitted the way we submitted? So I just wanted to briefly talk about why we, exceeded some of these TOD guidelines, and what kind of thought process we had there. So, as you guys are familiar, TOD does have a lot of strict guidelines on parking, podium height, tower width, and whatnot. And one thing that we've heard from our community meeting and even back looking at the condo hotel is that we need more residential units. So this project, is 56,000 square feet, a little bit over an acre. We're providing 631 units on this site. From just a density units per acre standpoint, we have significantly more units per acre than Kuile Place, than 1538 Kapiolani. So it's a lot of units on a, smaller site per se. And when you have more units on a smaller site, there's a couple things happen. One is the units are more affordable by design. So they might not be affordable. They might be market units, but they're not, 2,000 square foot, 2-bedroom units. These are more affordable, more sized for local people there, is one part. The other side is that with more units, you need more parking stalls. And the TOD plan has a maximum of 1.25, and we're within that 1.25. But just with the limits of our site and the parking podium height, we get above the 65-foot parking podium height. Excuse me, in the area. So it's kind of a balance of, the tower width too. If we got the tower smaller, we'd have less units, less market units, less affordable units all around too. So we're really hoping to maximize the units on the site. And I'm going to be frank, with our redesign, we are going to end up lowering the amount of residential units that were proposed to meet everybody's standards, or we're going to have to.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment since I was asking the question. I do know that you guys made a request to see us, but it was late. And if you look at the schedule, you guys are pros. You should know the scheduling. I was unable to fit you in, and just because of the complexity of this project, you should have planned And so I'm going to be deferring to the chair on his recommendation on this.
Councilmember Wire.
This is on the extension of time.
Yes, that's all it is.
Yeah, I'd say give them as long as they need. Sounds good. DPP doesn't have a problem. We need more housing, and I think it's a lot less problematic than some of the other extensions we granted. So, yeah, I don't see any issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. I currently am not a voting member, but I understand the need for the housing. I was grateful to have met with you guys. I'm sorry that not everyone was able to. So I would also respect everybody's input here, but I was along the same lines of what Councilmember Wire mentioned, that to me, if the project needs to go forward, we do what we can. And I think this is a good message to the developer that the council is looking at what's happening and to be more mindful of not having unnecessary extensions or doing all that you can to not extend this further than it needs to. But I also understand that there was, along the 6 lines, there was COVID and everything happening in between. So without being here in the beginning of the project and just giving my input, I wasn't opposed to allowing the extension for what it's worth. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Chair Waters, would you like to interject your thoughts since you were the only one here when they first started off this particular project?
Sure. My philosophy is to defer to the chair. But personally, I have no problem with the extension. But I think the developer should be aware that this committee, just reading the room, that they got problems with this. So that if you do get the extension and you do come back, that you really should take these comments seriously and comply with what DPP is asking. Because in my mind, I wanted to ask DPP, what's the likelihood of rail getting to Ala Moana? The whole idea was to create more density, more activity in the area because rail is going to get to Ala Moana. But if rail is not getting to Ala Moana and we're creating all this density, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a mess of cars all over the place. So I think that's something DPP should keep in mind as well. But otherwise, I mean, the 120-day extension doesn't really hurt.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts and your insights. Thank you very much, Mr. Sato. The chair would like to request maybe Liz, would you please come up for a question from the chair?
Thank you, Chair. Elizabeth Krieger with Department of Planning and Permitting.
Okay, the question for me, Liz, is the fact that if they do come back with a new plan, will DPP review it?
So the question is, during this process with this resolution, if they come back with a new plan, will DPP review it? Yes, we will review it. That said, we don't have a procedural mechanism to be sending you a new report and recommendation. It's under the current application, so we would be reviewing it the same way you would, and we would be providing comments. Yeah, and especially we would be providing comments about the extent to which they had complied with what we were expecting.
Thank you. Councilmember DeSanto Sam, please.
Thank you, Chair. That was a good question. I want to build on it. So in practical terms, if we grant a 120-day extension and they were to make modifications at some point, although, at that point it's kind of Christmas time and New Year's time, DPP would have to review those changes and then provide a report to us. So that's scenario A. Scenario B is we don't approve this and they come back with a quote-unquote new application, which maybe looks fairly similar to this with some modifications, and DPP would review that. What is the time difference between scenario A and scenario B in practical terms?
So scenario A is a 120-day extension is granted. we don't produce another report and recommendation because it's under the current one. So maybe we send a memo or something to the chair about our response to those things, but still the ultimate resolution would have conditions of approval that would still likely have requirements for design that would have to be shown in the major special district permit and the building permit plans. But yeah, they would get an approved resolution under that scenario in 4 or 5 months. Under the other scenario in which an extension of time isn't granted, then next month or the month after, it's on the agenda again for the zoning committee, and the committee has to decide whether to approve the project with conditions, which would require them to redesign after the resolution was approved, because the conditions would require that redesign, or the council would choose to deny it, in which case they would do what Isaiah said, that they would redesign, come back to the council for a briefing only, go to the neighborhood board, apply with it would be a whole new IPDT package.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Because all 9 of us here, we are not the experts. And right, we depend on you, DPP, to come up with the comments and the concerns on behalf of the residents. Okay. Members, we've had a lot of discussion on this. At this point in time, we've got 7 members who are here, and the majority of us will be back. So this particular issue will be before the council once more. And having this thorough and very open and transparent discussion, the chair would like to recommend that I would like to just deny the 120. I'm thinking that you're going to save the developer money. What do you think they can accomplish in 120 that we will all have to make a decision on the original concept with the changes that they're making? And that's where I think what Liz was saying is that they can make comments, and that's about it. But I just want all of you to have your educated decision made on all projects that are before this council. So, Mr. Sato, I always ask myself these questions too, and I believe in deadlines. How did you folks arrive at the 120 and not, let's say, 90 or 60?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we'd actually be open to a shorter time. We were just trying to be conscious of everything going on with the holidays. And also thinking of past IPDTs. I think a lot of times in the last 2 I've worked on, I know we've asked for 120 days on those TOD permits. I know a lot of times these come to more than 2 zoning committees, sometimes 3, sometimes more. It's just complex projects that we like to make sure everybody has time to review and decide on. The other parts is really the holidays. I wasn't sure how the January meetings are going to be, if they would have a zoning committee and whatnot. So I just kind of blanket asked for 120 days just to make sure that everyone had our bases covered there too. On our side, with the design and the owner, my understanding is they're working hard at looking at other options and should have something in the next few weeks for your consideration at that time. But just really wanted to make sure everybody had time to do what they needed.
Okay, members. Councilwoman Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair.
Cordero.
So really quickly, Isaiah, so if the 120 is not granted, but you're saying that was like a blanket number, what would be the most accurate or reasonable time that you would need, or the developer would need, to finish the project or get the permitting process done, and whatever you need at this point, if it's not 120, that was just a blanket?
Yeah, so let's just kind of map out a quick timeline. So if, say, we come out with a new design in 2 weeks, council or DVP needs a month to review it, then we could potentially be at the November zoning agenda. IPDTs, historically, they've had public hearings, so we'd have to be on December potentially for a public hearing, and then another zoning committee, which wouldn't be in December. I'm not sure if there's going to be one in January, so it'd be at the next one, maybe February time for approval in March. So that's kind of the full 120 days. If the second zoning is in January and then the full council for adoption is in February, then it could be 90 days depending on when those meetings are and if it's within that time frame. But
So you're basing it on our schedule? I mean, when the committee and the council meets?
for the most part, yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cordero, did you have a follow-up question? No, or?
Thank you. Mr. Sato, how long was the time from between submission of the application to receiving the report from DPP?
90 days.
90.
About 90 days. Yeah.
About 90 days. Okay. And how long ago was that? At the beginning of this month?
So DPP's report made it to council on the 5th, September 5th.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That does help.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sato. Ms. Kruger, Liz? What would be your deadline in regards to the review process of modifications?
The way we wrote our report and recommendation would incorporate the design modifications as a condition so that the applicant would have the time they needed after the resolution was approved, and the department could review what they submitted under the major special district permit, as well as the building permit process. So the way we recommended conditions, it was essentially sending the redesign out after the conceptual plan approval.
Okay, thank you. And the next question would be, any modifications that is of a major change, who makes the final decision in regards to approving or saying it is in compliance? As an example, there was a project that had the off-site affordable housing, and they had to come back and go through the process. Would an off-site acquisition of a property, not adjacent or not part of the property itself, but maybe a half a mile to a mile away, trigger a mechanism of whereby, hey, maybe this particular resolution should go back to the drawing board to incorporate all of that?
The report and recommendation that we transmitted with recommended conditions did not have any accounting for a concept of an off-site affordable housing location. I understand that the applicant appears to be exploring that idea now. That's something that we weren't made aware of and haven't been made aware of by the applicant. So yeah, that's something that our recommendation didn't contemplate. In terms of the extent to which the council is comfortable delegating the authority to review revised plans to the department, that would be incorporated into the resolution. So the council has the option to say, this conceptual plan is not what we want to see. We want to see something different, bring us something different. Or they can say, this conceptual plan could work. If these changes are made, we want DPP to review these changes. And if they're made, then go ahead and proceed with the project. So it really has everything to do with the City Council's conceptual plan review and the details that you want in that review.
Okay, that's really, really educational for all 7 council members who are here this morning. Okay, after hearing all of the discussion from all of you members, at this point in time, based on the discussion, I don't believe the applicant would be able to move forward with this project. with DPP's recommended design conditions, and since the applicant may opt to provide additional affordable units at an off-site location, it would be more efficient for the applicant to submit to DPP a new application for a revised and redesigned project. So at this point in time, the chair recommends that the 120-day extension of time request for Resolution 24-227 be denied. Any discussion, objections, or there are objections. Was there any objections with Councilmember Wire and Okimoto? Go. No, vote your conscience. It's just that it's going to come back again
Yeah.
in a different form.
No, I mean, I'll defer to Chair. Was just sharing my thoughts since asked, because this isn't my district either. It was just, understanding, like, for example, Sharks Cove, which I think is a similar concept, right? Like the landowner trying to figure out what they're going to do with the property. Maybe they're going to try to capitalize and sell it. So I just wasn't too sure what all the concern was, but appreciate the discussion, and I'll defer.
Okay. Okay, the chair will restate it once more. Is there any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. This particular measure has been adopted, whereby it is now denied. Moving on to agenda number 5, Resolution 24-226. This resolution denies a special management area major permit and shoreline setback variance to Graham and Elaine Smith to allow the installation of a 16-foot deep steel sheet piles on the Mauka side of the existing non-conforming seawall, covered and bolted to the seawall by a concrete sheet pile cap, held in place by 9 steel tieback rods attached to 9 concrete deadman anchors, buried 25 feet Mauka of the seawall, including the addition of concrete splash lip of 1 to 3.5 feet in height atop the non-conforming seawall on 18,076 square foot shoreline lot. Zone R10 residential district located at 1226 Mokulua Drive in Lanikai and identified as tax map key 4-3-005:056. Members, for your information, the written request for an extension of time for an unspecified number of days is available online as miscellaneous communication 411. At this time, we would like to call upon the applicant. Mr. Eric Robinson.
Aloha, Chair. Jeff Overton of G70. And I apologize for being remote. I'm attending my daughter's wedding this week up in New England. But we do have in attendance Eric Robinson and Mr. Ivan Louis Kwan, as well as Kira Ramos from our planning office. We are requesting an extension of time to continue to discuss the project with the neighbors of the property in Lanikai, as well as the administration. So we are requesting additional time to work through it.
Okay, please. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Committee Chair Say. Good morning, members of the committee, Chair Waters. I'm available for questions further in line with what Mr. Overton stated. The applicant here is requesting an additional extension so that we can address a number of concerns that we have with DPP's recommendation with the administration.
Okay. Members, any questions for Mr. Robinson? Councilmember DeSanto Stan.
Thank you. So the resolution contemplates the denial of this application. What are if we were to deny this, what would the remedies be for the property owner to prevent erosion of the property, prevent perhaps spillover erosion to the neighboring properties, and these other sorts of effects?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Without diving into the merits of this too much, and my understanding from a non-engineer's perspective is that there are limited responses that could be taken, such as restacking the rubble mound revetment that's there, but it doesn't address the key concern of the fact that the seawall itself needs repair.
And to follow up, so if the seawall were to fail, who's potentially liable here? Let's suppose there's somebody fishing or traversing. Who's liable in that case?
That's a great question. I don't think it's one that has been addressed directly in Hawaii courts yet. I think we may be seeing it addressed soon. Just yesterday, we're seeing another house fall into the sand and the water on the North Shore. So I think the question of who ultimately is liable and responsible when we have homes falling in the water or erosion and destruction happening on neighboring properties will likely be addressed hopefully in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the administration. Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna or Liz Kruger?
Good morning again, Chair. Elizabeth Krieger, Department of Planning and Permitting. We support the extension request and are available for any questions.
This is Resolution 24-226.
Yes, for extension of time only, right?
Well, the title, it says deny a special management area major permit. And we're discussing the extension, and you folks are in support of the extension.
Oh, we're fine with the extension of time if the council desires additional time to review the project.
Okay. Remember, any questions for the department?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So, Liz, so he agendized the resolution rejecting it. So I'm assuming that DPP's position on the overall project is to deny. However, the applicant through G70 has requested a 60-day extension. So I just want to make clear for everybody, because they're not familiar with the project completely. First, DPP rejects the current permit, but supports the 60-day extension. Is that correct?
That's right. We're recommending denial of the special management area use permit and the shoreline setback variance. But we do not have any issue with the 60-day extension of time for the City Council to review and act on the proposal.
Do you believe that 60 days is sufficient time for the applicant to address your concerns?
There's no way for them to address our concerns on this project.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we're, unlike the previous project where we were recommending significant changes, in this case, we're recommending denial.
Okay, and I'm sorry for the applicant. I should have asked you, thank you. Can you explain to me in the 60 days what your expectations are to achieve?
So just an initial matter, I'm not sure if 60 days is quite enough time given the council and committee's calendar with the upcoming holidays. But what we're seeking to achieve during the extended time period is to resolve a number of discrepancies we've identified between prior SSV and SMA applications that have been processed by DPP, including for similarly situated properties, and kind of addressing the larger policy question that this particular application poses.
So you're hoping to convince the City Council that in your disagreement with some of DPP's conclusions that you would be able to convince the City Council otherwise of disapproving this permit. That's what your objective is, correct?
That is one objective.
And why did you only ask for 60-day extension instead of a longer period of time?
So my understanding is the extension request itself does not specify a number of days. I did speak with Councilmember Say's office and initially indicated that 60 days would be perhaps the right amount. Having further looked at the council's calendar, I think it may be more appropriate to have more time.
Well, I think that that's your job, not Councilmember Say's job, because you guys are in the business of doing this. The fact of the matter is you could have requested a longer extension time. And I myself would have been willing to either extend it to 90 days or longer. But I think that we're going to be in a quandary here. I am going to defer to the chair on this matter, but if DPP is saying that, I mean, if you are saying that you, I guess I didn't know what you were going to do in the in 60 days, but if it, first of all, I think it's insufficient amount of time for you to try to convince us otherwise. But anyway, thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Councilmember Keane. And if I may, I would just again highlight that the applicant's request that is in the agenda and the record here does not specify a number of days for the request.
Okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. This question is for Ms. Kruger. Hi, Ms. Kruger. Thank you very much for your responses. For clarification, the department would support the extension of time, but do not feel that the applicant will be able to address the concerns posed.
That's right. I think that the extension of time would give the city council more time to evaluate the project, but it wouldn't change the department's position on it.
Okay, and so it wouldn't matter if we also just reject the extension of time either.
If the extension of time is approved or rejected, that either way, I think the department's in the same position.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilmember DeSantis Tam, followed by Chair Waters.
Thank you. Liz, what is the city's policy with regard to existing seawalls?
Existing seawalls that were lawfully established, so the existing seawalls that are non-conforming may be repaired up to 50% of their replacement value unless that extends or increases the nonconformity. In this case, the applicant knows that what they're calling repairs to the seawall exceeds the nonconformity, and therefore they're applying for a shoreline setback variance.
Who makes a determination about the 50% value?
The department does. So the way that works is if you are a landowner, you would hire somebody to evaluate the work, say how much that work would cost to completely, say if it is a seawall, how much would it cost to completely replace the seawall, and then how much is the anticipated value of the work you're proposing to do on that seawall. So it starts with a third-party consultant, and then the landowner would submit that to the department.
And then going back to the 50% threshold and nothing that would increase the nonconformity, is that in ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, do we have a policy for new seawalls?
The policy is all based on Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 205A, which establishes the shoreline setbacks and what is and is not allowed in the shoreline setbacks and what requires a variance. And then we at the city level also adopted the ordinance to discuss under what circumstances shoreline setback variances could be approved.
I guess my concern is for many of these aging seawalls, and granted, I don't have any of these residential seawalls in my district. Many of them are aging to the point where substantial repairs will be necessary. And I wish that we had some kind of, I know we have a policy of 50% replacement, but that may not be exactly the right landing place for some of these older ones that require substantial work. The alternative is just sort of shoring them up, but eventually in the context of sea level rise and other things, they will fail, and that creates other issues. And I wish we had the opportunity to do a more holistic look at exactly what the policy is for these very aging seawalls in this context.
Thank you very much. Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. I'm looking at exhibits M2 in the reso, where there's a photo dated in 1986, DPP shoreline photo. Are you familiar with this photo?
I remember looking at it before. I don't have it in front of me.
Basically, it depicts the home, but in front of the home, in one of the pictures, is a large green area, looks like grass and alpaca, probably 30 or 40 feet wide. And then in 1989, the photo right below it also has the green area plus a huge sandy beach. Yeah? Do you remember those photos?
Yes, I do.
And then turning to M3, in 1994, there still was a large beach and sand area. And in 2000, there still was a sand area, but it looks like it was considerably less. And then turning to exhibit M4, in 2004, there seems to be an exposed seawall. Is that exposed seawall in the 2004 photo the same one that is now in disrepair and where the applicant is seeking to repair?
Yes, that's the same seawall. We believe that the seawall was built in the 1960s and then was buried for several years and then was re-exposed.
I'm not sure you can answer this question, but what happened to all that sand that was there? Where did it go?
What I understand from the University of Hawaii, the group with Dr. Chip Fletcher, is that a lot of that Lanikai sand migrated to the Kailua Beach Park area. So I think these photos very clearly show the dynamic nature of these shorelines over a series of decades.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, that it migrated to the boat ramp area and where Ka'elepulu Stream leads into the ocean. Do you recall years ago where the city took a bulldozer and took all that sand away? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
You know, I was at the shooting range recently, and they don't have sand there, and the bullets are now hitting the bedrock and bouncing into the neighborhoods. They used to have sand there, and I was told that the sand that they got was from Kailua Beach and Ka'elepulu. It was I'm guessing DPP wasn't aware of that. But who would approve the removal of that sand? Would it be DPP?
Generally, whenever there's sand movement, that's an Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands at the Department of Land and Natural Resources who's involved, because it's usually offshore sand or sand that's makai of the shoreline, so it's in their jurisdictional boundary, and then they evaluate the sand and the donor sand and the receiving beach and make sure that it's somewhat similar. But yeah, that's a procedure that they go through.
You know, in Waikiki, we do sand replenishment. Obviously, everybody's seen that. Can't we do the same thing in Lanikai?
Those type of long-range proposals definitely are things that I think people are studying, and our options for purposes of the Department of Planning and Permitting, when it's makai of the shoreline, we don't have that authority to administer those programs.
Okay. But if you look at Lanikai Beach now, and you look at the shoreline, so you're saying Mauka of the shoreline, DPP has some jurisdiction?
That's right. The regulatory shoreline the certified shoreline survey becomes that location of jurisdictional boundary. Because the area Mackay of the certified shoreline is in the State Land Use Conservation District, and therefore it's under the administration of the Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands at the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Okay, and you said that typically beach restoration is a long-term plan. I'm not aware of any plans to do beach restoration in that area. Are you?
No, we haven't received anything like an environmental impact statement preparation notice or anything like that. I do know that the area around, well, I guess there are proposals that various entities have evaluated, but none that I think have gotten to the point that they would be producing environmental documents. But they would require an EA or EIS in the conservation district.
You know, I used to go to Lanikai a lot until this ban of parking, but what happens when you have these seawalls? Does that exacerbate the movement of the sand for the neighboring properties?
Yes, so unnatural barriers, so seawalls, revetments, sandbags, all of those things affect the natural ocean process. And what happens with wave action is that it takes away sand, and then when the wave comes back, it brings back sand. So that sand is constantly cycling. And when there's a barrier, it can't replace the sand, so it tends to cause erosion. Of course, each beach is unique, and many beaches have seasonal cycles. But yes, seawalls definitely impact that natural process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councilmember Wire, please.
Mahalo, Chair. And mahalo for being here so often and all the insight you bring. I first just wanted to ask, in terms of the extension of time, are there situations where DPP doesn't support an extension of time? And I'm just asking that to help process and know what the recommendation means when we get it from you.
In general, an extension of time request we absolutely see as the council's prerogative, especially because it often reflects the council's schedule or the council's time needed to evaluate something.
Okay.
So in short, I can't think of a time when we've said, please don't pass an extension request.
But that's not indicative of saying supported either. It's just kind of not our kuleana, so we'll leave it up to the council.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. And then just a quick question too, given, and I'll stay within the scope of what we're discussing, seawall, the implications of the inundation. As an example of current impact, we have the home that I'm sure you're well of right now. And so I'm just curious, understanding that DPP is already working on it, just broadly speaking, what are remedies available that you're aware of in terms of the city being able to respond? I know DLNR filed their injunctive relief complaint yesterday evening. What tools does the city have that you're aware of?
When you're talking about tools that the city has, are you talking about resiliency tools to prevent that from happening, or are you talking about once materials are falling and on the beach access corridor, what do we do?
The latter. So
Okay.
for example, particularly if the city could say just go and clear it out and build the owner, I guess is the underlying question as well.
Sure. What I understand about that project site at the moment, which is on Kainui Drive, they already had notices of violation. And I believe that inspectors visited the site yesterday and are citing them again to say that the structure is not occupiable. I don't know what actual documentation has been issued at the moment. And then, of course, like you're saying, the state has the ability to require them to clean up within the beach transit corridor. And then I personally don't know exactly how the department will proceed with ensuring that the house itself is cleaned up. That in this case, I'm not sure that they have any other part of the lot to retreat to. Like, I don't know if they can move the building out of that area or if it's just going to need to be demolished and removed.
Okay, appreciate that. So I guess the underlying question just generally too, without honing it on this property, there is a standard at which DPP could enter a property and remove structures?
We don't enter properties and remove structures. However, our building inspectors, we have multiple types of inspectors. Our building inspectors will visit sites that appear to have unsafe structures and will cite that owner to say, this structure is unoccupiable, no one can go into it, and you have to repair or remove it. But we don't have crews that go out and do that type of thing that I know of. I
Okay.
would defer to Don I would defer to Director Apuna
Of course.
on that kind of thing.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any questions? This is a very fascinating topic for all of us to discuss as far as shoreline setback, high water, mark, et cetera, as far as jurisdiction over state versus city. For Mr. Robinson, who were your consultants in coming up with the concept of your 16-foot steel sheet piles on the Mauka side of the existing non-conforming seawall, and then is covered and bolted? Who is that particular consultant or engineering company?
So for the applicant, the engineering consultant here was C Engineering. They've done a number of shoreline engineering projects throughout the state, as council's likely aware. And they did consider several alternatives to what's being proposed here in the applications, which in short order didn't address the issue of needing to fix the seawall.
Okay, that's another alternative, fixing the seawall. Well, throughout my career, you've seen it all. You can't stop Mother Nature, correct? And sometimes, I don't know, maybe the upbringing that we all have is a reflection of when Mother Nature tells us that we're not supposed to be constructing or executing or implementing invasive technologies to the natural environment. What happens then? Mr. Robinson, being an attorney, if this particular project was granted a permit, but it's being denied right now, who would be held liable once the project is completed with all of these technology that you've stated will happen? Would the abutting property owners then file a lawsuit if it affects their property?
So with respect to the neighboring properties here, I'd highlight that I believe approximately 70% of the Lanikai shoreline is armored, including the adjacent properties. So it's not clear that there would be effects as far as erosion and whatnot goes for those neighboring properties. And this is a phenomenon that we see throughout Oahu, where we've got approximately 60% of the shoreline parcels that are armored. So this isn't something that is a one-off. It's going to be a recurring issue as we figure out how to deal with aging, non-conforming shoreline hardening structures.
No, that's why I posed the question. Will the city be held liable along with the private landowner when we granted them, let's say, a construction permit to do what that engineering company is talking about?
My understanding is that the city, if they don't already require, would likely require some sort of indemnity here in terms of the applicants doing the proposed work. And I believe that's a similar construct that the state follows as well.
Okay. Any further questions, members, at this point? Councilmember Wire, yes, please.
I just had a quick question maybe for Liz again, just to clarify, because if time was extended it wouldn't necessarily alter the current condition, but would just extend time for discussion and reconsideration. But the denial is still in effect, or the request for denial would still be in place until DPP changed its mind, right? Or something like that.
Well, yes. The DPP's evaluation is about the applicant's meeting of the tests of hardship that are necessary to approve a shoreline setback variance. And in our evaluation, we found that they didn't meet the test of hardship, and that in fact granting the variance would be inconsistent with state law under HRS 205A. So that's our position. That's what's written in our report. And a change in that, a change in the proposal or the change in project or adding an indemnity clause, none of that would really change our evaluation. I mean, a full new set of plans would require us to completely reevaluate. But I don't believe that that's what's proposed. I think that they're just hoping for more time to explain technicalities to the council members.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Any further questions, members? If not, let's proceed on. Madam Clerk?
Chair, if I may.
Oh, yes.
I believe that Mr. Louis Kwan may have some further input to add, if that's okay.
Okay. Mr. Kwan, Louis Kwan.
Ivan Louis Kwan, I'm a counsel for the applicant here. Just for clarification, some of the reasons we want the extension of time was to interface with the administration, DPP and the mayor's office. Principally because we believe that the action taken here has immense policy considerations for the whole city and county of Honolulu. Our consultant has indicated that there are about 2,200 seawalls in this city and county of Honolulu, and that does not include those government structures on the shoreline in downtown Honolulu. And so that's one thing. The second thing is that notwithstanding the understanding of DPP, we think that we really want to have a discussion about the question of hardship, about the question of repair. As the DPP has indicated, repairs are allowed. And so I think what the focus is on the nature and form of the repair. And so there was a lot of discussion about how the repair is done. What our consultants, C Engineering, will say is that the repair that they propose is one that complies with the building code. If you're going to make a repair, you want to make the repair consistent with the applicable laws and regulations with respect to construction and repair. So those are the kinds of issues we want to spend some time with. And I would suggest a 90-day period, just because I think that just gives us more time. We're just not trying to waste time. We really, truly want to explore potential ways to solve this thing.
Mr. Louis Kwan, the chair has a question. Then why can't you go and address it with the state legislature?
I'm sorry?
Why can't you go across the street and address it with the state legislature in regards to Hawaii Revised Statute Chapter 205A?
This is a good question, Chair. And so Act 16 was incorporated into 205A, but Act 16 really is not truly applicable here because it relates to existing properties that have no existing seawall. And so when Act 16 was enacted, I think was around COVID time, and there was not really a lot of action. And in fact, we've had a great deal of discussion with the state legislature, dealing principally with properties like Waikiki.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Louis Kwan. Then the other question I have, and maybe it's addressed to Liz, can you come up with what the hardship standards are for the SSV, the shoreline setback variance? What are the standards when you talk about hardship standards that were incorporated in the report?
Let me read them so that I get them exactly correct. Okay. The 3 tests of hardship. The structures will neither adversely affect beach processes. Wait, I'm sorry, let me make sure I've got this. Okay. Hardship as defined in Chapter 26 of the Revised Ordinances of Honolulu may be found only if all of the following are met. The structures will neither adversely affect beach processes nor artificially fix the shoreline, and the applicant and landowner would be deprived of reasonable use of the land if required to comply fully with this chapter and the shoreline setback rules. The second test is the applicant's proposal is due to unique circumstances, does not draw into question the reasonableness of Revised Ordinances of Honolulu Chapter 26 and the shoreline setback rules, is consistent and compatible with surrounding land uses, and is unlikely to adversely impact neighboring properties. And the third test is the proposal is the practicable alternative that best conforms to the purpose of this chapter and the shoreline setback rules. The analysis of the practicable alternatives must include a thorough assessment of potential impacts and consideration of mitigation measures to avoid or minimize impacts, including but not limited to the relocation or reconfiguration of the structures and the restoration of coastal resources.
Thank you very much, Liz. Okay, Mr. Overton, would you like to respond to those 3 hardships as far as the applicant complying with it?
So today, we had not intended to provide a full presentation. I think that would have really helped inform this whole discussion had we gone forward with our formal presentation, whereas we felt it'd be best for us to take some additional time to work through some discussion, as Mr. Ivan Louis Kwan mentioned, and Eric Robinson, some additional time to speak with both neighboring property owners who are very concerned about this as a precedent that would have application here, as well the administration. We are fully prepared to have a complete presentation that addresses many of these points, and including the hardship test that was mentioned by DBP. We'd be glad at a future zoning committee meeting to walk through that full presentation and answer some of these questions directly. I don't know if you would like us to interrupt the agenda and go forward with all that. We believe it's a reasonable request for additional time here, Chair, and that's the essence of our request.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any further questions? Yes, please.
Or just discussion whenever it's appropriate.
Okay. Any further questions for the testifiers? If not, may we proceed on to Madam Clerk. Are there any remote testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Any in-person testimony?
Yes, Chair, we have one standing by.
Okay, Ms. Young, please.
Aloha, Council Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES, commenting on the repair of the seawall for the G70 project. So actually, the special management area and 201H review processes, although are legislated by the state law, are processes to be carried out by the counties. What this means is that the state will have the office to explain the legislation, which is from the Office of Sustainable Planning and Development, and it could have also have a process of commenting from DLNR because it has to do with environmental standards and natural resources. So if the county has questions they cannot figure out, I think DLNR and the Office of Sustainable Planning and Development are the appropriate offices to answer your questions. And so special management area is regulated to protect coastal resources, to guide construction and development standards, to cooperate with nature, enacted in 1975 as the Shoreline Protection Act. Special controls on development shorelines are necessary to avoid losses of valuable resources and to ensure adequate access by dedication or other means to publicly owned beaches and nature reserves. The law goes on to explain by science the nature of how nature reacts and responds to detrimental hazardous building standards. The goal is to protect and to restore the land. So as long as the repair does not compromise on safety and environmental standards, it's reasonable to push it forward.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, members, Madam Clerk, are there any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councilmember Kiaina.
Mr. Chair, just listening to all those who, both DPP as well as the various council and agents for the applicant, as well as the various council members, my preference would be to recommend a 90-day extension. Now, given the fact that we just rejected a project that was not as complicated, the fact is that their project was known. And so I do feel that in order for us to make such a strong recommendation to reject, that it would be good for the applicant to be given the opportunity to not just work with the neighbors, work with the administration, but also to give us some time to know about the project so that we are fully informed when we make such a major decision as to reject this application. So that's my thought. And I just wanted to say why I differentiate that from the previous one, because we are not privy to the whole project. And I do know that the concerns by DPP were clearly significant. They don't do that. But having said that, whether it be this particular project or the bigger picture of seawalls in general, I think it is a good dialogue for all of us to have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember DeSanto's time, followed by Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. I would support Councilmember Kiaina's suggestion for an extension of time. I think that denial at this point would be a little preliminary, given that we have not just this seawall, but there's going to be many others that come up. We have the existing 50% replacement value policy, but I can foresee a scenario where if we start to have a precedent of just denying these, people are going to start haphazardly doing 50% repairs, and then at year 10, when that 50% expires, doing another set of repairs. We're going to be in a scenario where that's fairly unregulated and outside of sort of an overall policy look. I'm also concerned that while it seems, based on the conversation we've had today, that some of the liability questions on the part of the city, on the part of the property owner, as well as the adjacent property owners, haven't quite been ironed out. I'd like to look at that because if we start denying these and subsequently there's some sort of issue that arises, I want to make sure that we're understanding that as well. So I'm fine having a 90-day extension. I don't expect that we're going to resolve all these things in 90 days, but hopefully we can start a conversation about what an overall policy looks like for these existing seawalls, which maybe have some unique situations. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Wire, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Also, yeah, I would support the extension. I think just as a general matter, I would only oppose probably an extension of time if there is going to be a negative impact on the community. Otherwise, I wouldn't see a reason to necessarily not afford folks more opportunity to have discussions. I do think this issue is extremely complicated. I think we made the right call passing bills 41 and 42 last year, right? The codification of the SMA requirements and also implementing the, managed retreat process from the shoreline. And of course, I think when we look at hardening and the impacts it has on our community, we do want to reduce that and look at various measures. At the same time, I think we got to understand that this is just the beginning of the conversation. I am very aware of how quickly erosion is affecting our coastal communities across the district. A few weeks ago, I was out at 2 homes in Honolulu that are just on that cusp. And then we look at the property up at Cammy's today. Not just an issue of enforcement, right? Because I think DPP, DLNR have been following through with the violations, right? But then we don't always end up with compliance. And so right now we're having to deal with, I'll be on a call later this afternoon with our state delegation and the state AGs, but, we're dealing with wastewater, right? Coming into the ocean on all the debris from the homes, and it's only gonna get worse. And so just want to flag that I don't think it's a black and white issue, and I think we need continued discussion to continue moving us forward in terms of how we're going to better be able to respond to these issues as a city, understanding that, we can't just harden everything. We want to have managed retreat. We need a process that allows us to meet the needs and actually result in the outcomes we want, right? Not just the legal mechanism to get there, not just the ability to regulate and require and fine, but also the pathway to achieve what we want to in terms of protecting our coastlines, our community, and our environment. So thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Chair Waters, your thoughts? Gold Coast, Diamond Head, Kahala?
I'm okay with the extension, but I'm just not sure it's going to change anybody's mind. But thank you.
Okay. Based on our discussion, members, the analysis by DPP and recommendation to deny, the chair recommend that we do not deny it, but we do support the extension. So at this time, the chair notes that the time needed to consider resolution 24-226 that exceed the current deadline for the council act. So therefore, the chair recommends that the resolution be granted 90 days extension of time pursuant to the request from the applicant's agent in miscellaneous communication 411 of 2024. Are there any discussion? Any objections or okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Objections.
Okay, there's one objection. So we have to take a roll call, so let's start off, no roll call, just objections, okay. So any discussions, one objections, any reservations? If there's no reservations, hearing none, so ordered. Wish them the very best in 90 days. Let's move on to item number 6, resolution 24-208. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Hawaii Home Buyers Group to allow for the construction of a new 2-story structure with a 3-bedroom primary dwelling unit with covered lanai on the 2nd floor, attached 2-bedroom accessory dwelling unit on the ground floor, carport, and perimeter fence on approximately 5,064 square feet of land, zone R5 residential district, located at 54-84 Kamehameha Highway in Hauula, and identified as tax map key 5-4-001:048. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us in the council chamber is Mr. Mark Howland from Whale Environmental Services, LLC, the applicant's agent who will be providing a brief description for your information. The presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 420 of 2024. Mr. Howland.
Thank you, Chair, Council members, Chair Walters, for having me come up here in front of you. A couple of points before I begin. This is a piece of property at 5484 Kamehameha Highway in Hauula. It's a SMA major application. 2 points before I start is we've appeared in front of the neighborhood board, the Hula Community Association, as well as met with a couple of butters. As you can see, this property is immediately adjacent to the community center where those committees hold their meetings. They unanimously want this building torn down and repaired. That's been unanimous. Additionally, this is, I would like to thank DPP for their patience on this. This is a native Hawaiian builder who is not used to SMA regulations, had difficulty interpreting them. DPP was very helpful in guiding them through the process. So we'd like to thank them. slide 2. This, of course, we're in compliance with the rules, regulations, and statutes. The proposed action location is renovation of the existing single-family residence, construction of a new single-family residential addition, and internal ADU on the same footprint at the location off the Cam Highway. It's a non-shoreline lot. It's inland, but it's in the velocity extreme zone. It's in the R5 residential district. It's composed of 0.1163 acres. It's also pretty much all in the 3.2 sea level rise. This is the proposed activity of basically severely renovating the existing single-family structure with a new internal ADU, 2 stories, built according to flood standards, and it'll retain the delineation of shoreline setback that the current resident uses. The proposed sea level rise erosion rate does not even cross the Cam Highway. This property's marker of the Cam Highway is not on the shoreline. The shoreline is a beach park. This is the condition of the property, as you can see. It's in rough shape, to put it kindly. This is one of the proposals that both the Community Association and Neighborhood Board would like to see repaired. This is the plot plan of where it's located. It's right on the corner of the general area there in Honolulu. The land, excuse me, the land ownership is Hawaii Home Builders Group. The builder is Ground Up Pacific. Estimated project cost is $700,000. It's in the Kukulei Haula microclimate, which basically has less sunny days than Kuku would. And as you move closer and closer to Kaneohe, of course it gets wetter and wetter, so it's at the lower end of this microclimate. Soil types, as shown on the property, is mostly Jacka sands, which is another reason why it triggers development questions. If there are any EV, we've submitted this to SHPD for review and consideration. They've indicated that they probably would like cultural monitoring. It's all located in the 3.2 sea level rise. As you can see, the red balloon is the project site. Region-wise, you can see the green vegetation line and the 3.2 coastal erosion line are across the Cam Highway, basically located within the park. Reed's Rock kindly provided us the shoreline delineation for the park, so we had that line to work with. It's got a kind of small sea level loss, about 8 feet in the next 70 years, so it will not come out of the park also and reach this property. According to FEMA, it's all in the velocity extreme zone, and it's one of the reasons why it's an elevated structure. There's predictions for it being under 3 feet in the NOAA 6-foot surges impacted in that manner. Under normal, passive flooding is not exposed to routine flooding. As can be seen from the hurricane maps, the property is that little white circle. It's pretty much not exposed to any severe degree. Category 4, like most of Oahu, there will be an issue, however. To adhere to provisions of the Endangered Species Act, we've consulted with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Land and Natural Resources, put in the guidelines. We've put in sound monitors that we had from my days as the ITEM coordinator at Kuku Training Area. And we did one nighttime observation that nothing was detected for any of these species. We do know that the Pacific golden plover does use the beach park, and also sea turtles, but they don't come on to this inland property. The only seabird that you might want to worry about is the wedge-tailed shearwater. Since this property is sands, we don't think they'll come this far inland, but if they do, just like there'll be a cease and desist for any cultural artifacts discovered. If any endangered species come onto the property, work will immediately cease until U.S. Fish and Wildlife or Land Natural Resource gives guidance of how to proceed. So this has been distributed to agencies. The routine comments were basically like the fire department, make sure within 75 feet you can access. Police, make sure neighbors and agencies are noted of the construction periods, stay outside of nighttime work, things like that.
Okay.
So if you have any questions or answers,
Thank you very
I'll
much,
gladly-
Mr. Howland. Yes, Councilmember Wire, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo, Mr. Howland. Mahalo for doing, you said there'll be archaeological monitoring as the work's going on. I'm just curious, how much outside of the current development footprint is the project going to be?
Not at all. It's going to be on the same exact footprint. So Susan Liebel is not so concerned because outside of putting some reinforcement pilings, there's not really going to be any expansion outside.
Okay, appreciate that. Yeah. And mahalo again for the outreach to the community and look forward to seeing the improvements on this property.
Yeah, the associations and the neighborhood boards were very interesting meetings. They would love to see this repaired. Yeah.
Appreciate that sentiment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Howland? If not, let's proceed on to the Department of Planning and Permitting. Ms. Liz Kruger?
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Elizabeth Krieger with the Department of Planning and Permitting. We support the CD1 for this project, and we support the project. And we have staff here available to answer any questions.
Any questions, members? Councilmember Wire, this is your district, Haula. No questions?
No further questions. Appreciate DPP's due diligence.
Any further questions for Liz? If not, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Are there in-person testifiers?
Chair, there is one standing by.
Okay, Ms. Angela Young.
Aloha, City Council, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. In favor of the new single-family dwelling in Hauula. So Hauula is a consensus, a designated place, and a rural community in the Loa district. And the special community is designated to provide data for the Consensus Bureau, and it's defined by states and local agencies and tribal officials before each census, and then reviewed and approved by the Census Bureau. And the purpose is to provide data for well-known unincorporated communities. They lack a legally defined boundary and a functional government. So because Hauula has a special characteristics of a community due to its rural nature, we should pay special attention to the marine life and environmental resources to minimize impacts to endangered, protected, and threatened birds, marine life, and terrestrial fauna, which are species such as chickens and water creatures like crustaceans and lobsters. Especially in our generation, we really are aware of like EV kapuna and environmental standards when building. So as long as it doesn't compromise on the safety and environmental standards, the council should consider pushing it forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Young? If not, Madam Clerk, are there any more in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Members, we are in discussion. Any discussion? If not, okay. At this point in time, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-208 be amended to the committee draft 1 posted on the agenda. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-208 committee draft 1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussions, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much, Mr. Howland. Moving on to agenda number 7, Resolution 24-225. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Lorenzo Village LLC and Susie T. My French Trust to allow the construction of a new 2-story single-family detached dwelling with an attached 3-car garage and the construction of a new 2nd-floor addition and carport for an existing single-family detached dwelling on an approximately 12,502 square foot shoreline. Lot zone R5 residential district located at 91-173 and 91-173A Eva Beach Road and identified as tax map key 9-1-002:010. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed committee draft version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us remotely by video conference is Tenio Nakayama, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation. And for your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 441 of 2024. Please proceed, Ms. Nakayama.
Screen sharing.
Okay, we can hear you. Okay, please proceed, Ms. Nakayama.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. I don't see it. Is it up?
It's
okay. Okay. Good morning, Chair and Council members. I'm Tenio Nakayama. I'm here today to present my SMA major project. This project is located at 91173 and 91173A, Eva Beach Road in Eva Beach, Hawaii. This presentation is to remodel an existing home and build a new residential home on vacant land. The proposal, the development site TMK 91023-010, encompasses approximately 0.287 acres of land situated in Eva Beach. Currently, this land is zoned residential. The property is split into two CPR lots. The first lot, which is 91173, is proposing to renovate an existing structure. 91173A is proposing to construct a new two-story residence. The objective of this project is to better utilize the land, providing housing, which has been carefully designed to withstand potential flood, rising sea levels, and to protect the shoreline. So let's talk about our plans. This is a general overview of the property. Starting from the left of this plot plan, on Eva Beach Road, the vacant land is closest to the street. The green segment calls out the existing structure in which we will renovate. And to the right is the 40-foot setback to the ocean. The first scope is the existing home, which is approximately 1,600 square feet and was built in 1936. There's two levels, an upper and lower. We're going to consider renovating the single-family residence, modifying the structure, and expanding the first and second levels. The second portion of the project is to construct a new two-story family residence. The two-story family residence will consist of a main kitchen, living room, dining room, 5 beds, bath, laundry, and car garage. The area calculation, as stated earlier, was 12,502 square feet of the entire lot. The proposed building area is 4,011 square feet. The total lot floor is 6,262 square feet, which puts a floor to area ratio of 50.08, well under the allotted amount. The first scope, the design scope, the lower level plans are here for the lower level, and on the bottom for the upper level. 1,581 square feet is the total building area, and the total floor area is 2,722. This is the scope 1 elevation, so the ocean side, the street view, and the side view. The renovation addition to the existing structure computes less than 37% of the floor to area ratio. Total impervious area is computed at less than 63% of the lot, which is the allowable 75%, is well under that. All plumbing will be retrofitted with low flow fixtures. Moving on to the design for the scope 2, the vacant land. This is the elevations for the proposed home. This is the second project of the portion of the project. It will consist of the main kitchen, living room, dining room. The overall building area is 2,430 square feet. Overall floor area is 3,540. The construction of the structure computes less than 65% of the floor to area ratio. The impervious area is computed at less than 39%. Solar will be incorporated to these plans. So part of the requirements to satisfy the SMA major was the environmental review. It was not required here for 1 and 2 family detached dwellings on a single zone lot. A notification and presentation. All adjoining neighbors were notified, and a presentation was completed in front of the Ava Beach Neighborhood Board number 23 in July of 2022. The master application was submitted in April of 2024. As far as the evaluation, the project is being valued at more than $500,000, which solidifies the requirement for the major. Project information, in addition to the scope, considerations to the shoreline, soils, and flood zones were accounted for, and I'll go into further details on the next slides. Finally, in evaluation, additional considerations were researched to understand the impact the project would have on historical, cultural, coastal, economic, marine, and other resources. The lot shape here is rectangular. We did a topography survey. According to the U.S. State Geological Survey, the subject property elevation is approximately 4 feet above mean sea level. The development is an existing structure on one CPR lot, and the other is undeveloped on vacant land. Surrounding uses is residential. A shoreline certification was performed in 2023. The proposed projects are well within the, The proposed projects with the inclusion of the new structure will not be built in the 40-foot setback following the best management practices outlined by the EPA, would prevent any runoff or other construction debris from migrating off the site. The project is not seeking a variance from the shoreline setback. Nearest body of water is the Pacific Ocean, and the United States Department of Agriculture Soil Conservation Service classifies the soil within the site as coral outcrop. Coral outcrop is classified as excessively drained with low runoff, not primed for farmland. The vegetation here is interspersed throughout the parcel. None of the vegetation on the site and surrounding property appear to be distressed. And in regards to the flood zone, it is determined to be excess, which is an area outside of the 1% annual chance of flood. The evaluation, I provided a written statement demonstrating that the proposal will not significantly affect the SMA. Historical and cultural resources will be safeguarded and conserved as identified on the subject property. The proposed project will safeguard marine and coastal resources. No work will be performed within the shoreline setback zone. Coastal hazards will mitigate hazards to life and will protect the property from coastal hazards to the greatest extent possible. As far as recreational resources, the proposed project does not impede the provision of coastal recreation opportunities to the public. And consistent with plans and regulations, this proposed project will adhere to all rules and regulations in accordance with the general plan, development plan, sustainable communities plan, and zoning ordinances. Our vision, some key points that I want to address. The family. These are local residents who live and play and work with us every day. This is their dream homes and will house their children. This is not a vacation home or short-term rental. Parking. There are 7 stalls located on this lot. This will not overflow into the streets and cause congestion to the community. And beach access. Located next to this lot is a beach access, and it will remain free to access and unobstructed at all times during and after construction. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nakayama. Members, are there any questions for the applicant? Chair Waters, please.
Just based on your last comment that this is a family-owned property, can I ask, what is Lorenzo Village LLC?
That is the owner who is building this house.
So what does LLC stand for?
Limited liability company.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Why is it a limited liability company?
I am not sure. On all the applications that I turned in, we signed under his name. I think there were some parts of the construction drawings that named the LLC instead.
Okay, we'll try to follow up on that. Can you help us out also, Ms. Nakayama? Why the LLC? Okay. Members, any other questions for Ms. Nakayama? If not, thank you very much. Please stand by for other questions. At this point in time, we have the Department of Planning and Permitting, Liz Krieger.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Elizabeth Krieger, Department of Planning and Permitting. We support this project and we have no objections to the CD1, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Okay, members, any questions for Ms. Kruger? If not, thank you very much. Let's proceed on to the remote testifiers. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Are there any in-person testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have one standing by.
Okay, Ms. Young, could you summarize your statement in strong support, in opposition, or no position?
Aloha, City Council, Angela Melody Young, testifying in favor of the resolution for the special management area. It seems like the developer is very careful and considerate of the soil disturbance as presented. And that's something our generation with the development of science and law is very considerate of. So for example, soil disturbance causes depletion of nutrients, and then the plants can't grow. So when the soil is disturbed, all the other plants, they don't grow. So I think that is very considerate of that developer working on the project, so we should move it forward. Thank you.
Members, any questions for the testifier? There being none, is there anyone else standing by to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, and clerks, is there anyone standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, that being the case, members, any discussion on this proposed resolution? Okay, there being none, should I proceed, Janelle, with the recommendation from, okay. The acting chair recommends that resolution 24-225 be amended to the CD1 posted on the agenda. Is there any discussion, objections, or reservations to that recommendation? Hearing none, the resolution's been amended to a CD1. The acting chair then recommends that resolution 24-225 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. We'll now turn to agenda item number 8. This is resolution 24-219. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Modern Development LLC to allow the construction of a new 2-story single-family detached dwelling with lanais, attached 2-story garage and gated driveway, installation of a new individual wastewater system, landscaping, privacy and security fence, and underground utility service lines, and removal or relocation of existing utility pole on an approximately 19,340 square foot shoreline lot zoned R5 residential district located at 57-320 Puna Ulua Place in Kahuku and identified as TMK 57003-049. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to resume with the CD1.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chair. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Today, joining us remotely by video conference, we have once more Mr. Jeff Overton, and joining us in the council chamber, we have Lily Young Chun from Group 70, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 409 of 2024. Ms. Chung.
Aloha, Chair. Jeff Overton
yes.
Here. And I just wanted to introduce the project briefly for Mr. Scott Blum is the owner of this property. And we do have a brief presentation that our project manager, Leela Cheng Yun, will provide for the council today. We'll try to be respectful of your time. We realize the schedule.
Okay, please. Press the button.
This is Leela Cheng with G70. So the owner of the property is Mr. Scott Blum, and the land area is approximately 19,340 square feet. The property is designated R5 residential, and it is located within the West Cavella Bay Community Association. Here is a location map for the home planned on this North Shore Cavella Bay property. We are very close to Turtle Bay Resort, and Kahuku Town is just around the coast. And the aerial photo here shows Kavela Bay and Kamehameha Highway. The outline in red is the boundary of the subject property, and the SMA extends from the shoreline all the way across Kamehameha Highway. So the entire parcel is within this special management area. Skipping ahead, here's a view of the property from the Mackay side, looking toward the adjacent neighbors to the northwest. So the home that you see is currently the neighbors. The owners have obtained a certified shoreline survey from BLNR dated December 29th, 2023. The demarcation in red follows the regulatory shoreline and edge of vegetation. This is the line from which the shoreline setback is measured. As you'll see in the next slide, the shoreline is a rocky bench, and napaka vegetation generally shows the limits of a high water mark. Here's a projection of the future sea level rise, the blue shading shown on the graphic here, and the coastal erosion limit, which is the bright green line. Because of the rocky shoreline headland formation of this property, this model shows no erosion line, again, for this parcel. And the unique features of this property, you can see in that picture to the top left, right? So again, we're not anticipating that annual high wave flooding or wave overall should reach the limits of where this home will be built. Here's a conceptual site plan. Peter Vincent Architects is responsible for the design of this project, and the site plan shows that the planned location of the new single-family residence. The building will be set back far from the shoreline, as you can see from this depiction, and the footprint of the building is modest, taking up a small percentage of the lot area. Here are some perspective views of the new home. First on top, you see an aerial view from the bay, and below is the view from Punalua Place. The scale of the home is fitting in the neighborhood, and the owner was intentional in the style of the home in respect to the character of the neighborhood, as well as being conservative with the shoreline and street setbacks. Peter Vincent Architects is a well-respected architecture firm, and the design of the home, it's a beautiful take on modern plantation-style architecture. With the new landscaping, it should fit nicely into the current look and feel of the Kavela Bay neighborhood. This plan shows the buildable area of the site. Another unique feature of this plan is that the owner has generally adopted the city's new 60-foot shoreline setback, even though it qualifies for the 40-foot shoreline setback based on the time the application was submitted prior to the rule change. Landscape elements and allowed fencing will be covered under a minor shoreline setback permit. West Kavela Bay Community Association has allowed for a 15-foot setback from the street. This is also more restrictive than the county land use ordinance, which calls for a 10-foot front yard setback. Although the plan for this home is providing a deep shoreline setback, the location is not particularly vulnerable to sea level rise or erosion. The total area for the single-family residence is about 2,500 square feet, and the lot coverage, which consists of the roofed areas, is 10% for the site and 15% impervious area when accounting for paved surfaces, which is quite modest. Here you can see the vertical building envelope and the planned two-story home in section view. The overall building height will be well within the maximum height limit adjusted for flood hazards. The habitable space of the residence, shown in green hatch, will be limited to the upper floor. The finished floor elevation is above the base flood elevation, 17 feet, and the upper floor provides all the living spaces with a total floor area of approximately 1,580 square feet. The lower floor area is limited to parking, storage, and utilities, not habitable space, and the lower floor elevation is above the 8.5-foot MSL. Other site engineering and utilities. An existing wooden utility pole will be removed from the site and will be providing underground electrical and communications in cooperation with the neighbors. Stormwater will be managed on site There's a natural dip on the property, and that will be maintained as a lawn basin for, again, infiltration and to prevent drainage runoff. The owners will also install a high-quality individual wastewater system, which is regulated by the Department of Health. So in summary, this project is consistent with the SMA objectives. It is a single-family residence that will be built at the inlandmost portion of the lot away from the ocean. There will be no effect on coastal recreation or public access. The new home will not alter beach, adjacent waters, or cultural resources, and the archaeological study conducted anticipate no effects to cultural resources. We are coordinating with ShipDeep currently to see if further study is needed. For the Kapaya Kai analysis, we interviewed owners of the adjacent Punu'ulua Pond, which is state-registered historic property, and a local kumuhula with no significant findings. Solid or liquid waste will be managed properly. Best management practices will be used to minimize soil runoff during construction to protect water quality. Landscaping, including native plants, will be used. Important coastal views are not affected. No potential indirect or cumulative impacts have been identified, and overall the development is consistent with the state and city-county plans and policies. We have reviewed agency comments and made adjustments, including relocating the laundry to the upstairs above the base flood elevation and removing cabinet shelves downstairs. The 50% transparent shoreline fencing is aligned with the Sustainable Communities Plan. And finally, we acknowledge HPD comments to ensure we notify neighbors for traffic during construction. We thank you for the ability to give this presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that the council members or public may have. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Jones? Chair Waters, please.
Thank you very much. Beautiful piece of property. I'm just curious, when did Mr. Bloom acquire the property?
I don't have information on the acquisition date. Jeff Overton, I don't know if you have any more information.
Been about 2 years. He had previously owned another property in Cavella Bay.
I see. Where is the property line? Is it all the way up to the ocean, or is there a portion of, it looks like rocks, but is that public or private? I'm just curious where the property line is.
It runs, Chair, along the kind of crest of this rocky shelf in here. So as you can see in the survey here, the property line extends out, and then the certified shoreline is kind of the wash area on top of that coralline bench that forms that edge. It's not an erodible property here.
Okay, I'm not that familiar with, I'm familiar with Cavella Bay, but I'm just curious if fishermen and or women are allowed to stand on the rocks and fish, or are they going to be excluded by the owner?
That's a great question. Thank you. And we spoke directly with Mr. Blum about that. And there are actually some pole holders grouted into the rocks out there. And he's completely fine with folks utilizing this portion of the property for lateral access and for fishing and other kind of gathering rights. As long as it's not a party in the middle of the night that's, really disturbing. He's an ocean guy, so it works well.
I'm looking at one of your slide decks, the one that is titled Sea Level Rise Projection. And you could see on the picture there, that's the one, there's vegetation and then there's rocks. So does his property line exceed the vegetation line and include the rocky area?
Yes, I believe the property line extends out beyond the Naupaka.
I see. Okay. Is he going to put a fence up over there?
The plan is to put a low fence that's allowed under the minor shoreline structure approval, which would have to be 50% transparent, and it would extend along the inland edge of that Naupaka grove.
And how high would that fence be?
I don't believe it can exceed 42. I'd have to look at the plan, Chair, but I think it's somewhere around 3.5 feet.
I see. Okay, is that part of the SMA permit?
It's wrapped in, but a minor shoreline structure needs to be obtained from DPP to erect that fence within the setback.
Okay, thank you. I just Googled Mr. Bloom. It looks like he's from San Jose. Is this going to be his primary place of residence, or is he going to still live in the continent?
As far as I know, he splits his time between Hawaii and home on the mainland of the continent. I'm sorry.
Just out of curiosity, does he have an opinion on our empty homes tax that we're voting on later on today?
I have not asked him. I could poll him on that question, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, call me and let me know what he thinks.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Any other questions for Mr. Overton or for Ms. Cho? No? No. Thank you.
Can I just say, Chair, I just want to say good job.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you.
Leela does a wonderful job.
And let's proceed on to the Department of Planning and Permitting. Liz Krieger.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Elizabeth Krieger with the Department of Planning and Permitting. We support this project and we have no objections to the CD1. And we're available for questions.
Okay, members, any questions for the department or Liz at this point in time? If there is no discussion, Madam Clerk, are there any? Oh, go right ahead.
No, go ahead. Testimony first.
Yeah. Are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Are there any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there is one standing by.
Okay. Go right ahead, Ms. Young.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES in support of the G70 team constructing the new single-family house with a garage in Kahuku in the special management area. Although it is a far distance from Haleiwa, the connecting communities share bordering boundaries and have similar special characteristics as beach communities. So just for consideration of if the developer is careful, he or she will consider that Haleiwa is a special district, is a special design district, and how building in Kahuku will affect the natural resources. So when we look at the project, it submitted a permit for a minor shoreline structure within the shoreline setback boundaries with special attention to privacy and security fencing, because encroachment is a concern within the 60-foot shoreline setback boundary. So I think that is very considerate of coastal zone protection and natural resources. And also, there's going to be the building of the Sharks Cove Alliance and the emergency response building. So as a council, that should be something that is considered as all this development is going on.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Young? If there is no questions, let's proceed on. Members, we are now in discussion. Okay, Councilmember Kiaina.
Chair, just, it's a small question because I see that your CD1 wanted to just include verbiage that no verbal or written testimony was received for the public hearing. And I actually just don't see the value in having that fact in the resolution. I understand, that it's good for us to know about. I mean, for our committee reports, for example, accompanying legislation, we say when a hearing was held. Because I need to let you know, just because no one was there doesn't mean that there are no concerns. So for me, it's an irrelevant fact to put in a resolution. It is something that is good for us to know, but I don't know why it's being inserted in all of our SMA projects. That's all. I just wanted to understand why. Don't think that just because you have that fact, you can go in a court of law and say, well, the fact is nobody cared, right? The fact of the matter is the public, just like a hearing that we have in the city council, they don't have the time to go. Sometimes people don't know. So while it's important for us to know, I don't understand what the relevancy of that sentence is to be inserted in these resolutions. And I'm sorry I missed the other one. You had one a couple of items ago, and I missed that. So
okay,
just I wanted to make that note.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, any further discussion? If not, let's proceed on. The chair would like to recommend that Resolution 24-219 be amended to the Committee Draft 1 posted on the agenda. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-219, Committee Draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Oh, yeah. Your concern.
Is there a reason why that has to be included?
It's just part of the template at this point.
No, who made that recommendation? I guess I just wanted to know. I don't understand the justification, so I will defer to you, but I'm just saying they shouldn't be happening moving forward.
Okay, we'll get an answer for you after.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back now. Any discussion, objections, or reservations?
Chair, I just wanted to hop on to Vice Chair Kiaina's comments, maybe not specifically to that, but I think in general it's worth having a conversation about the sort of standard conditions that are attached to these SMA things. I've noted in the past that sometimes certain conditions get applied to one and not to others, and certain statements get made for one and not the other. And I think it may be worthwhile having the conversation with DPP about what the expectations are overall.
Right, correct. Okay. So any further discussions? If not, objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Let's move on to agenda number 9, Resolution 24-231. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Timothy Gutierrez to allow for the demolition of an existing single-family detached dwelling and the construction of a new 2-story single-family detached dwelling and 2-car garage in approximately 18,316 square foot shoreline lot zone R10 residential district located at 312 Wailupi Circle and identified as tax map key 3-6-001:019. Once more, members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us remotely by video conference, we have Mr. Jeff Overton once more, and joining us in the council chamber, we have Kira Ramos from Group 70, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation for your information. The presentation is available online as miscellaneous communication 412 of 2024. Okay, is Ms. Ramos here?
I think Jeff's going to
Thank you, Chair. Jeff Overton, and I just want to introduce Kira Ramos, who's our project manager for this, and she's going to give a very nice presentation. It's rare when we get a trifecta, so thanks for allowing me to come in remote. I apologize for being away. Kira?
Hi, Chair Say, Chair Waters, committee members. Thank you for your time today. This project is the reconstruction of a single-family home located on Wailupi Circle in Ainahaina. This aerial image shows the property's location along Wailupi Circle. This is a shoreline lot bounded by the ocean to the east and single-family residences to the north, south, and west. The property is owned by Mr. Keith Horita. Assisting him is the applicant, Mr. Tim Gutierrez, both in attendance of this meeting today. The property is about 18,000 square feet and is zoned R10 residential. Here's a closer image showing the existing structures on the property. The property consists of an existing single-story, single-family home, a legal non-conforming pool with a pool house, and a legal non-conforming seawall. Today, the presentation and the project focuses on the reconstruction of the single-family home. This image shows the existing single-family home from Wailupi Circle. As part of the application procedures, a certified shoreline of the seawall. So the project calls for the reconstruction of the single-family home. The existing home will be demolished and removed, and a new 2-story single-family residence will be constructed.
Shown on the screen is the site plan for the first story of the single-family home. The newly constructed home will be located outside the 60-foot setback area. Right here is the second story plan for the newly constructed home. As part of the reconstruction of the single-family home, a landscape plan has been prepared. The palette will include native and Polynesian introduced plants and will fit in with the existing residential community. So right here is a graphic overlay of 3.2 feet of sea level rise as shown in yellow. And the home, the newly constructed home, will be located outside that area affected by 3.2 feet of sea level rise. Right here is a front elevation view of the newly constructed home. The home will adhere to applicable land use development standards for the R10 residential district. The home will not exceed the 25-foot height limitation and will adhere to all setback requirements. This will be a beautiful new residence fitting in with the quality and the character of Wailupe Circle. This home will be designed to embrace sustainable design elements and include LEED Gold certification. Features will include water and energy efficient features, safe building materials, and it will be specially designed to really include ample natural lighting. The reconstruction of the home meets the SMA policies and objectives. The reconstruction of the home is not anticipated to affect coastal recreational resources, including public beach access. The project will not impact infrastructure and utility services serving the greater neighborhood and region. There will be short and long-term measures in place to reduce stormwater runoff and protect water quality. New landscaping will include native and Polynesian introduced plants. And the newly constructed home will adhere to height regulations and will not impact views from the public right-of-way. And the reconstruction of the home is not anticipated to result in cumulative impacts to the neighborhood or greater community. And last of all, the project is consistent with state and city policies and regulations. Right, here's a snapshot of the permitting schedule. So a presentation was made to the neighborhood board back in March. A public hearing was held with DPP, and right now the application is under review and approval with City Council. Mahalo nui for your time today. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramos. Members, any questions for the applicant, Ms. Ramos? Chair Waters? Nope, no questions. No questions. Everyone, no questions. Okay, no questions. Let's proceed on to Department of Planning and Permitting.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Elizabeth Krieger with the Department of Planning and Permitting. We support this project and we have no objections to the CD1 and we're available for questions.
Okay, members, any questions for the department? If there is no questions, let's proceed on to the remote testifiers. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Are there any in-person testifiers?
Yes, Chair, there's one standing by.
Okay.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying in support of the Aina development and the agent G70 and the team and their building as it adheres to the Sustainable Communities Plan.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? If not, let's proceed on. Members, we are in discussion. Any discussion on Resolution 24-231, where the applicant and the department is in strong support, and Ms. Young. If there is no discussion, the chair recommends that the Resolution 24-231 be amended to the Committee Draft 1 as posted on the agenda. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-231, Committee Draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Congratulations, Ms. Ramos. A job well done. Let's move on, members, to agenda number 10. Resolution 24-228. This resolution authorizes pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute, the 201H-38 exemptions from certain requirements relating to the Hale Melia Affordable Rental Housing Project on approximately 31,977 square feet of land zone BMX3 Community-Based District located at 1105 Pi'ikoi Street and 1216 Young Street in Honolulu, Oahu, and identified as tax map key 2-4-004:046 and 078. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed committee draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us in the council chamber is Mr. Christopher Fong from Tradewind Capital and Kaloa Robinson from Sanford Car Development, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 438 of 2024. Okay, Mr. Fong. And Mr. Robinson.
Robinson. Good morning. Good morning, committee. Good morning, chair. My name is Kaloa Robinson. I'm the project manager from Stanford Car Development, a 34-year-old Kama'aina company that largely specializes in affordable housing. I'm very grateful to be here and grateful to be joined by Stanford Car and my esteemed colleague, Chris Fong from Tradewind Capital, with whom we're partnered on for this affordable housing project called Hale Melia. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Fong from Tradewind Capital. Chris?
Good morning, Council, and thank you again, Chair Say, for letting us be on the agenda. And thanks, Kaloa, for that introduction. We'll start off with an introduction to the team. Again, my name is Chris Fong, and I work for Tradewind Capital. And Tradewind Capital is a local-based investment firm that invests in local businesses and commercial real estate. On the housing side, one of our more notable projects was the development of 801 South Street Towers in partnership with Marshall Hung. That was a workforce housing project, condos on Kapilani Boulevard in South Street. And for this project, again, we are partnering with Stanford Car Development, a world-renowned local-based development firm, true pioneers in the affordable housing space. I have up here two of their projects that you might recognize. Hale Kiwalo, 128 affordable rental project on Pi'ikoi across from Ala Moana. And then on the right, Hale Kuila Place. I believe it's 204 units in SALT. So good models of the project we're presenting today. So our team has deep local roots. And, a lot of folks don't know about Tradewind Capital, but we are part of a local family of companies under the Tradewind Group umbrella. And some of our sister companies include Atlas Insurance, Island Insurance, Pyramid Insurance, Paxa, and of course Tradewind Capital. And I just share that because, through our history and through our subsidiaries, we've been investing in the islands for over 100 years. And through our family of companies, we have over 500 local employees. And then, of course, Stanford Car Development, like Kaloa said earlier, a local-based firm, have built over 5,500 homes in the state of Hawaii, projects on all the major islands, Hawaii Island, Oahu, and Maui, and experience in all parts of the development process in Hawaii. So now we'll get into the thesis on housing. So, I know we all recognize there's a dire need for affordable housing in the state here. I have up here a couple of stats on the housing crisis. I'm sure you folks have seen some of these. I have up here 8. I could have put 50. I'll read through a couple of them, though, that maybe you haven't heard. Only 21% of local households can afford a mortgage on the median price single-family home right now. Median 1 and 2 bedroom rents in Honolulu for a 1 and 2 bedroom are $2,200 and $2,950 respectively. So pretty incredible how expensive. And then of course, as a result, and as we all know, the population on Oahu has been decreasing every year since 2017. So, we're really excited to be doing our part to help address this issue. So this is an overview of the project site. So it's the two parcels outlined in yellow. It's at the intersection of Pi'ikoi and Young Street. The parcel on the left that totals 20,000 square feet, I'll call that the Pi'ikoi parcel. You know, it used to house a three-building, it was actually a hostel operations, kind of a garden-style walk-up building. And then the parcel on the right, which I'll call the Young Street parcel, houses kind of your typical two-story CMU block walk-up apartment. Together, both parcels comprise about 32,000 square feet, zone BMX3, so business mixed use, allowing for housing. And the story of the parcels is that Tradewind Capital acquired both parcels back in 2017. Now, at the time, the Pi'ikoi parcel, so the one at the left, was encumbered by a long-term ground lease, and that ground lease expired in 2023, the end of 2023. So beginning of 2024 is actually when our organization was in a position to reimagine what the block would look like. And the thesis for housing stood out to us right off the bat. In the immediate area, there's various grocers. You have Safeway, Times, 1 block away on the Malka side, Daiso, Kitty Corner on the Eva side, Walgreens, Petco, you know, across a Pi'ikoi Street. And a lot of these grocers are open late at night too, you know, so it's perfectly slated for the resident that works a graveyard shift, that works multiple jobs, and needs to support their family at odd hours. Apart from that, there's various schools that are close as well. You can see on the map, we have Queen Ka'ahumanu Elementary, kitty corner to the site, Stevenson Middle School up the street, and McKinley High School, of course, down Pensacola, and medical facilities too. So obviously we got Kaiser Permanente down the street too on Pensacola, and the Straub Medical Campus, the new medical campus, you know, $1 billion project that's going to be opening up a 2-minute drive down South Beretania. And then the last thing I'll highlight is just the transit options in the area. So you'll see right in front of our site, we have a bus stop, but within a 1/4-mile radius of our site, we have 14 bus stops, 2 Biki stations, one block away on the Malka side by Safeway and another one on the Mackay side by Zippy's, and various designated bike paths down King Street in South Beretania. So needless to say, we think a perfect site, not just for housing, but specifically for affordable housing. So this is a picture of, the Pi'ikoi parcel improvements when we got the property back in the beginning of this year. And I'd just like to show this picture because once those improvements were returned to us from the operator, it quickly went into disrepair. You know, people got on site, ripped out doors and windows. It was a real safety issue. The neighboring businesses were complaining. And so we share this because in our minds, this is the type of development that you want to see. You know, it's a building reaching the end of its useful life. And the principles of the owners coming in to redevelop the site for higher and better use. If you were to drive past the site today, you won't see this. We actually demoed the improvements, and I believe it was February or March of this year. Because it got so unsafe, we actually took it upon ourselves to demo those improvements. So what you'll see today is just a vacant lot. So now we'll introduce the project, Hale Malia. So it's a 247-unit rental high-rise apartment for residents earning 60% of the area median income and below. It'll be 23 stories, so standing approximately 200 feet. It will include a mix of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom units. Will include 243 parking stalls and a separate parking structure, so it translates to approximately a 1-to-1 stall to residential unit ratio. And it'll be, again, exclusive to residents at the AMI threshold and below, but we will have a portion of the units dedicated to renters at the 30% AMI threshold. And when we talk about 60% AMI renters and rent, I have up here the published rents from HHFDC as of 2024. So to put it into perspective, a studio would rent at $1,400, $1,462 for a resident qualifying at $60,000 in annual income. And those are max rents, so that's the maximum we can charge, and they include utilities too. So when we were designing the project, we wanted to be thoughtful about the density we'd be introducing to the neighborhood. And so this is a snapshot looking in the Mackay direction, and you can see down the street is another project very similar to ours called Halekalele. That project is also 200 units and 20 stories, so standing about 190 feet. And then looking in the Malka direction, that project in the background is called Pumehana Apartments, 21 stories, about 200 feet. So again, our project is just consistent with other projects that already exist on the Pi'ikoi corridor. This is a snapshot of our ground floor plan. And so when we were designing the ground floor, we really tried to be considerate of the Pi'ikoi corridor because we know that traffic at certain hours can get tough there. So there's a couple of features I'll point out on the design. First, ingress, egress into the building is as far off of that Pi'ikoi and Yonge Street intersection as possible. So it's in the bottom right-hand corner, which residents would come in and out of, right turn in, right turn out. The other thing is we have 2 loading stalls that we've incorporated into the project on site. So there's no loading stall that would take up space on Yonge Street. And even the loading stalls where they're placed, and it's that U-shaped arrow direction parallel to Yonge Street. It's right along Yonge Street. So a trash truck or a loading vehicle can just pull in, stall, do unload and offload, and exit in one forward motion. The top right corner, that box that's kind of shaded, I believe it's dark blue or dark gray, that's a bike storage room. And so we were able to include at a minimum 128 permanent bike stalls. And I think we may be able to get even more with certain bike stall stack systems. And when we have some short-term bike stall areas along Pi'ikoi Street in the top left corner, and then a section along Yonge Street in the bottom in dark blue. And then lastly, I'll point out that we designed this project to respect a 22-foot setback off of Pi'ikoi Street. So Pi'ikoi actually has a road widening setback from the city and county if the city and county ever wanted to widen Pi'ikoi in the future. And so when we were designing it, we, I suppose, could have tried to encroach on that, but we said, what if we tried to live within that setback? And what it translates to is a nice open area along Pi'ikoi Street. And so we're really excited about this feature of the project. This is an example of us actually introducing green spaces into a hardscaped area and creating a nice experience for residents, pedestrians, and vehicular riders coming up Pi'ikoi. This is a snapshot of the typical floor in the building with the unit mix in the top right corner. And I just want to emphasize again, this is a mix of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom units. One of the few affordable housing projects that incorporates 3-bedroom units. This is actually the benefit of partnering with a shop like Stanford Car Development, because they actually have 3-bedroom units in some of their other projects. And so they could speak real time when we were designing to this, the demand for family units in the area. And, I have it outlined in yellow, but just emphasizing again that the majority of the units in this building would be for 2- and 3-bedroom units, so really serving the families. This model too is actually, this mix was modeled after Haleakawila Place in Kaka'ako. And that project, these guys will tell you, has had 0 effective vacancies since the day it was built, I believe 10 years ago. So a proven room mix. I'll go through this quickly, but these are just some example units of some of the various floor plans in the building. But we have studios in the top left, 1 bedrooms in the top right, 2 bedrooms in the bottom left, and 3 bedrooms in the bottom right. Efficient in their design, but sufficient in what they provide. Now we'll get into the requested exemptions for our project. So when it comes to design exemptions, so we will be requesting a height exemption of 210 feet. Which will exceed the by zoning right of 150 feet per BMX3 zoning. The density will be 7.0 FAR, and it's a 2.5 FAR by right in the BMX3 zoning. Height setbacks, and what I mean by that are transitional height setbacks, will be encroaching into the transitional height setback at a maximum of 16 feet. And joint development, all that means is we will be using 2 parcels to treat it as one for one development project. In the middle, I have the design exemptions that we are not requesting, and I just wanted to put that up there to really highlight that we tried to be thoughtful and not trying to ask for all the exemptions that we could get. And so I talked about the street setback off of Pequoy, but again, we are building or respecting the 10-foot street or building setback on Pequoy and Yonge Street. Loading stalls, I mentioned it earlier too, but we have 2 loading stalls, which is what is required for our unit count on site. And then bicycle stalls, so we have 128 at a minimum long-term or bicycle stalls, long-term just meaning it's for residents, and then 25 short-term bicycle stalls for visitors that may want to visit residents on our site. On the bottom, I have some of the fee exemptions listed. I just grouped them all together. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just highlight they are the standard fee exemptions you would see for 201H projects of this type. And then the last thing before I stop for questions is just a high-level timeline of this project. So back in March and April of this year, we began our community outreach. And so that entailed outreach first to the residents of the Yonge Street apartments that are on the Yonge Street parcel that I showed at the beginning. Notice to the neighboring businesses in the area. Presentations to the neighborhood boards. So we presented to the Makiki Neighborhood Board at the end of April, and we presented to the Ala Moana Neighborhood Board. We're not in the Ala Moana district, but just out of courtesy, we wanted to present there as well. May, we submitted our 201H application through DPP. So it went through the city's process through DPP. Of course, we're sitting here now at the final stage for council recommendation and approval. After council approves the project, we would submit for building permits at the end of this year. And then beginning of 2025 in February, we would apply for financing from HHFDC. I didn't touch on this earlier, but this project will be financed or seek finance through low-income housing tax credits and the state or city bonds. So again, I know a couple of these types of projects have already come across your desk, and this program is very oversubscribed. I think it's in the amount of 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 now, meaning that there's 4 to 5 projects for every allocation of funds available. So we're really hoping to get your support to show enthusiasm for our project. And then if we can win an award for this application round in 2025, we would break ground in the spring of 2026 with project completion in the summer of 2028. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Fong. Members, any questions? The chair has a question for you, Mr. Fong, and I'm happy that the housing director is here. This is a 201H project, which is great, and it's all rentals. Is there a possibility of having it some in fee? Some of your units in fee.
In fee. You know, it's a good question, and thanks, Chair. We actually evaluated that for years before we actually considered a LIHTC type rental project. And the struggle we came up against is, and maybe I'm sure you folks already know this, but just today with interest rates, inflation, construction costs, it's very hard to make fee simple condos pencil. The magic behind the low-income housing tax credit program is you have a lot of these state funds and funds from tax credit investors that help make the project pencil.
No, the reason why I pose this question is that yesterday we had a very, how would you say, very thoughtful, well-educated discussion. I think that was your friend, the two women, Mrs. Nojima? What's it was?
It's from the Honolulu Board of Realtors, Chair.
Yeah, that and the other person of the Hawaii homeowners group, and how the city has a program for fee simple units, and it's a $40,000 down payment. And the reason why I bring this up, I've been bringing this up for the past 4 years. I look at myself as representing all of these young men and women who work for the city and county of Honolulu, who are having a difficult time finding a 1 or 2 bedroom. So the thought would be, how can we qualify these individuals to maybe qualify for your project? And that's where, yeah, financing would be a problem, but Ms. Matsubara said that they have 40,000 per, was it something like that, applicant? They would get a low income, they would get a down payment. Is that correct, Radiant? Yesterday's discussion, whose friend was with the realtors? Your friend?
Well, no, they're just with the realtors, and I just invited them.
The lady that came yesterday and testified.
Yes.
Yeah.
Invited guests.
Invited guests. But, you know, you have Board of Realtors, you have this city.
Department of Community Services.
I'm just trying to figure out how we can help these young employees to qualify for those 1 or 2 bedroom. But building equity in the units rather than paying the rent that Mr. Fong folks are doing. And that's all it was. So yeah, if it is a possibility, you know, you could get thousands of city and state employees standing in line for these projects. But you guys try to figure it out. I thought Tradewinds had a lot of money, so you guys are going to finance it all. Because yeah, we talked about light tech, right? Chair Waters, how long it's going to take to even qualify. And one of my colleagues last night criticized me that, yeah, the state and the city, we don't work together. And this was at the neighborhood board, my good friend. So I bring this up because, yeah, how we can get units for the younger generation. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it at 80% AMI? And I said, wow. But it's all right. It's just that I bring this up for discussion that I hope someday you guys will follow up on these type of programs. Other than that, Mr. Fong, I don't have any questions. I think you're doing an excellent job. Radiant, question? Oh, thumbs up. Okay. Chair Waters?
Thank you, Chair. You know, after numerous conversations with the housing director, you know, it's really hard to build fee for 60% AMI or really 80% AMI, but that doesn't mean we can't keep trying. You know, I just want to thank you. This was a great presentation. And, you know, I've been advocating for building more units like this along the King Street and Baratania Street corridors. I think that whole area is ripe for construction. So this is fantastic. So thank you very much. You know, this is the first time I think we've seen you present, and I got to tell you, very impressed. And like to encourage the Tradewin Group to do more of these projects. You know, but I do have a question. It says here that your partner, SCD, is 3-time grand champion of the Building Industry Association. Is that true? No, I'm just teasing. But no, it's so great to see that you guys working together. And I again, just want to encourage you folks to do more of these because you have my 110% support. So thank you.
Yep. Radiant, please.
Thank you. Chair, I know that this may not be specifically for Chris or Mr. Fong, but I know that along different, especially highways, there's, how would I say, either State Department of Transportation highway setback, but this is actually the first time I've heard about the city's Department of Transportation Services setback, because all the setbacks that I have in my district were done by the state for possible widening, and I know the restrictions that it would have on properties, and I mean, I just bring it up because I'm going to ask, what do you think is possible if that setback, what is it, 200 feet, 20 feet? Oh, wait, press the button.
So it's 12 feet. And the reason why I was quoting 22 feet is we took the 12-foot setback on top of your standard 10-foot setback to get to a total of 22 feet from the actual street.
Okay. Okay, well, that, I guess, changes my question. I would not ask that same question, but the question I was going to ask is, if it was a 20/200 feet that I had in mind, what would have been possible with the rest of the property if you had that amount allotted? So, yeah. But I take it back because 12 feet is 12 feet. But never mind. Thanks, Chris. Next, I do want to note that I really appreciate this ratio, that you have the 1:1 ratio for the parking units. I know that we met and we talked about another property before, and I was talking about parking ratios there as well. This is another fantastic, a better parking ratio that I would be okay with supporting. So I just wanted to state that, but absolutely do support this. Great location, great project. But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Tyler, any questions? Oh, Esther first, and then Tyler,
Okay.
and then Val. Okay.
Thank you. First, I wanted to correct Chair Waters because I'm pretty sure that this grand champion was not from BIA, but in the sumo world, correct? Well, a couple of comments here. First of all, good job for the presentation. And I, of course, appreciate the size. And since we had a great debate recently about size of the units, the minimum size for the units here for the studio would be 338 square feet. I concur that we need more 2- and 3-bedroom units, so I like that. I do come from a landscaping family. I love the fact that you're going to have greenery here. We need it more. And then lastly, I know Chair Waters talked about where he would like to see more units like this. I, of course, like others, would like to see it along the rail corridor. It's critically important because it would help not just for providing housing along the corridor, but spur economic development and have actually increased ridership. So decrease the need for having to go, to get in a car. But, just wanted to also commend you for the presentation, the project. Thank you.
Okay, Tyler, please.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent project. The only question that I have is I want to make sure that all the developers are talking with the area school principals to make sure that they're able to plan ahead for enrollment. Have you guys been in touch with the Kahumanu Elementary principal as well as, I guess, McKinley and Stevenson?
Thanks, Councilmember Tam. Yes, we have. So I've talked with Principal Hall of Queen Kahumanu Elementary, and she's very supportive of the project. And we talked about the capacity if that would be an issue, and she flagged that it wouldn't be an issue and that they're actually looking forward to more housing for their students. In fact, I think they actually are dealing with the opposite problem right now, that they don't have enough students. I've talked to the principal of Stevenson Middle School up the street too, and they were also very enthusiastic for the project. I haven't been in contact with the principal of McKinley yet, although I have been trading phone calls to get in contact, but based off of feedback from the other principals, they were indicating that McKinley would be in the same situation of them where they're actually looking for more students.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank
Val,
you, Chair.
please.
Aloha, good afternoon. I had a couple of questions. I appreciate, and I don't get to see all of the, I'm sorry, I don't recall seeing this before where you actually had, I liked how you had that bike, you guys had a bike parking for it. I recently was able to visit and do a transportation trip with AMPO, and that was something that, especially the urban core, to get people out of their cars and riding bikes. So that was really nice to see. I'm interested to see how is this like a stacking, like a decking of bikes?
That's correct.
Okay. That's something new here. I did see it, outside of our state. But I did have questions similar to what Councilmember Dos Santos Tam asked with the infrastructure surrounding, knowing that you have units which will then cater to families, which is nice to know. What is the infrastructure around for the kids to get to school? I ask this because where I live, in the elementary schools, after they're built, now there's post-development or post-building, then there's crosswalks, keeping in mind that there's kids walking across now. And now one of my schools, they were asking for other things with the crosswalks for the safety of the kids. But I was just curious, I know Councilmember DeSantis asked about contacting the schools. With you having families in here, what is the infrastructure around it for the kids to get safely? Are we going to have to work with DTS on the backside after the project is developed to make sure that they're getting to school safely?
Thanks for that, Councilmember Okamoto. Yeah, I think our expectation is that we will be working closely with DTS and TRB more at the city level, based off of initial conversations with them while we were kind of socializing the project. They didn't flag any immediate issues, but we do expect it's an ongoing conversation. There are designated crosswalks, obviously at the Picoy and Young Street intersection. We also talked about the sidewalk widths and how our setbacks would kind of improve the sidewalk experience. And based off of our traffic report, and again, feedback from TRB, the expectation was that our project would actually improve the experience for people walking along.
That's good to know. And with the bikes that you have, so could we are looking at the students also riding to school? Is that possible? I'm not familiar with the area, I apologize. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Queen Kahumanu is literally kitty corner to the site, so I don't expect any issues. Picoy Street too is, I forget the technical term, but it's a multi-use street where it allows for bikes and cars. And then of course on King Street and Baratano, there are designated bike paths.
Thank you. I think anything, again, I feel like you guys have been forward-thinking, anything upfront that you can prepare for in the future, then it makes it easier for us on the back end when we have constituents who come and then they have concerns and we have to go through the post-building process. So thank you for doing that. Just quick question. We talked about fee simple versus rentals, and I know this is renting. How does this work with then filling the positions? I know when you're purchasing the unit, you go to lottery sometimes with projects like in my district, Coleridge, there's lottery. But how does that work with, how do you fill the apartments? Is it just, I'm not familiar, does it go out? And you said that in other projects there weren't vacancies, which is good to know. How do you guys plan to fill the units?
Thanks for that question. So for this project, we'll be working with a property manager, so a third-party firm that is responsible for helping us market the units and to enroll and enlist residents. I believe right now we're contemplating doing it on a first-come, first-served basis, and I believe there will be a strategy on how we market those units when it does come time to get out in the market to welcome applications. We haven't started that effort yet, apart from just notifying residents. So you won't see an official website up yet, and that's just because we're early on in the process. But as we get further along in the development process, that's definitely something that we'll address when it's right.
Okay, thank you. And so you mentioned the property manager. Is there going to be a resident manager or one of these units for a resident to be living in the building?
That's correct. We'll have one on-site resident manager, just as a function of how many units we actually have for this project.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cordero.
Thank you, Mr. Fong. My question is in relation to the design of the building. I do see, well, how many entrances do you have from, okay, so you have Picoy, then you have Young Street, and then, wait, what's above Picoy?
It's actually, on the Malco side, it's another property.
Oh, it's another property. Okay. And then I see that the on-site loading is only on Young Street, right?
I'm sorry, the on-site building?
You're loading, I guess where it says on-site loading. And is that the loading zone then?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, we have
so
our loading
there's
zone.
a loading. That's two loading stalls, right? It seems.
Yeah, so, and I'll point out too, and thanks for that question, Councilmember Cordero, that I think that recent rendering, we still have a loading stall in that area that you're seeing in front of Young Street. We've actually moved one of the loading stalls, though, in the most recent plans, which DPP approved inside the parking structure. Okay. And what that will do is it'll free up more space along Young Street for actually landscaping. So that was one of the comments.
Oh, okay.
And just getting ahead to, I think, your earlier comment on just entrances into the building. So we have entrances from all sides of the building. So off of Picoy Street through the open lawn area, off of Young Street, which will be the main entrance into the building, And then, of course, through the parking structure. And then we were working closely with DPP to make sure we had the right walking areas for people in and out of the building through the parking structure.
Okay, that's great to hear. And I know that you weren't privy to the discussions that we had in a special meeting on Monday evening, but there was something I asked DPP about for one of the prescriptions they had for the downtown area. And I know this is not the downtown area, but I feel like it could help, is pedestrian access, and I believe that means into other outside of the building. So it would be at all sides of the building. So there's entrances, but I mean, you could enter and exit into like gravel, you know what I mean? So are there pedestrian walkways at all those entrances on all sides of the building?
There are.
Okay. And that's still on your property, that on the project property?
That's correct. What's kind of hard to tell by the images I had up is we are on the corner of Pico and Young. So on the Diamond Head side and on the Malca side, we have two neighboring properties. So the real face and entrances of the building will be off of the Picoy and Young Street facing sides of the building.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Yeah, the Young Street, on the Young Street side, it's good that you moved it inside, so there's more landscaping or setback, as you said, because there are other there's more setback on Picoy, and then more so, I guess, to the neighboring building, and then I guess to the other neighboring building too. So that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Fong? Did we call up Department of Planning and Permitting already? Not yet? Okay. Why don't we call DPP up?
Hi, my name is Laura Mo, and I am the staff planner at DPP processing this application. We support this project, and we also support the proposed CD1.
Okay, this is your first time here, right?
Actually, it's been several years. I was previously with Planning Division, and my first time was for a PIM resolution, which you talked about earlier today.
Well, all of us here will be here for another 4 years. Maybe me, not me, but these 5. Okay. Any questions for, what was your first name?
Laura.
Laura, nice to meet you, and thank you very much for working for the city and county.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. What's that?
You charmer.
I'm not. I'm not. Just wanted to say thank you. Okay.
Wait. I was raising my hand.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Okay. Well, sorry. I forgot your name now that we had that.
No worries.
Exchange.
Laura Mo.
Okay. Laura. Ms. Mo, I was just wondering about I just asked Chris or Mr. Fong about the, the setback that was provided, and he made a comment that that is feedback that DPP provided to the applicant, right? And it's interesting because I just wanted to know that timeline in between the submission and how we got to this point before it came to the council for them to start working on this this updated design that is now before us.
So we do have a pre-application meeting that we highly encourage for 201H applications. So we did have that meeting. We did discuss that road widening setback at that time, as well as the front yard setbacks. So I think they had a pretty good understanding of that from then on. They then provide us the plans for review, and I think we gave them the acceptance letter saying that they've provided sufficient information. This is very similar to a lot of other land use permits. We have that sort of review period, let them know whether it's complete or incomplete, and then from then on, if we do deem it complete, continue processing. During that processing time, we do have a little bit of discussion, like further questions and comments. And so occasionally, we may notice something that's stated in the application, but perhaps the plans are slightly different from what the statements are. So those are the kinds of clarity that we're seeking. And so they may provide updated revised plans. So one of the plans that he provided, we were asking like, oh, the application materials state that there's going to be landscaping all the way around, but here you show this loading stall in an area that may be landscaped. Is there a possibility that this may be moved? And so they complied. They moved the loading stall and showed landscaping in that area.
I loved everything that you just said. So thank you for sharing that. And my next follow-up question is a pre-application just for 201H projects?
I think we have several others. All of them.
All of them.
Yes.
So even those ones that have asked for extensions.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you. And then as for the highway setbacks, I did mention that I only really saw it mainly because I guess how my district is set up and the different projects that only had to deal with the state's highway setbacks. And is that for like the life of like the entirety, like in perpetuity?
So that would be a Department of Transportation Services question.
Oh, okay.
They did have along PE Koi, previous road widening had occurred. And so it's sort of from Mauka, you sort of see the road getting slightly narrower just as it gets to that point where a lot of people complain about the traffic, actually. So it's not a DPP call. We just note in our systems that there is a road widening setback that you need to adhere to.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I guess I do understand where, there could be choke points that then does cause, I guess, where lanes merge, but it doesn't mean that there's an actual decrease, a decrease in the lane amount. So I think people just have to learn to deal with that because it shouldn't be that wide anyway. But yeah. I think this is great. Thank you for sharing that information about the process. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions for the testifiers? Okay, I have one more question. This is for Sanford Car Development. Mr. Robinson or Mr. Fong? In your timeline summary, it's fascinating from the start to the beginning. It's almost like 4 years. Right, your timeline?
That's correct. 5 years, huh?
5 years?
28.
28, yeah.
20,
Completion,
4 years.
28. This is 24, so I figured 28, 4 years. So you folks are the developers, you are the financiers. You folks are the developers, you folks are the financiers. Are there other ways to reduce these timelines? Because in 4 years, 4.5 years, your project will be forgotten.
Can we?
Mr. Carr, would you like to respond?
How much time we got? Stan, you should take that. That's a use.
Chair, say 4 years is about the time frame for a project of this scale. Of course, processing the entitlements through a 201H saves us probably a year, if not more. Which is why we've been using this statute to process these affordable projects for the last 17 years on numerous projects of both for sale and for rents, which is why we're here before you. The other thing is that we apply for federal state tax credits and private activity bond financing. Now that the city is back into the conduit bond business, having been absent for over 22 years, there's another shop to apply for bonds. So that's very helpful for building workforce rentals. However, the funding cycles or application cycles with the State Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation is only opened once a year during the month of February. So our next application, it will be we'll be submitting in February of 2025 for the 2025 round through a qualified application plan. In order to improve our chances of being awarded and allocated credits and bonds, the project has to be shovel-ready or near shovel-ready, which is why we're processing the timeline through a 201H. So assuming that we are awarded or allocated credits and bonds in 2025, they normally do not make these awards until August or July, between July and September, depending how many applications were submitted and scored. And so we would look towards a year-end 2025 bond closing or no later than the first quarter of 2026. However, if we fail to receive any allocation and awards of bonds, we will have to look towards the 2026 round. So that's how it goes.
You know, Mr. Carr, thank you very much for your commitment for housing for the state of Hawaii. But we brought this up at our hearings this past year so far. But most of our LIHTC funds, our low income tax credit housing funds, I was sharing with the members that it's all going to be earmarked for our state housing project.
We heard the rumor of that, and so we plan to testify because state projects are not necessarily. I would suggest in response to that is please take a look at the track record of the Public Housing Agency over the last decade to see how many projects have actually been built.
And that's why it was a concern for me that these tax credits are going to be encumbered for these state projects, whereby Correct. It doesn't give the other projects the opportunity of getting it. But it's okay. And one final comment I'd like to make, which is really the first time in my career how developers and financiers figure out their projects in getting the awarded construction funds. Why do you guys have to have your fingers crossed?
I'm sorry?
Why do you have to have your fingers crossed?
Oh, you know what? This is a risky business, so we need all the luck we can get and prayers along the way, aside from, being the best that we can be in the job.
I thought they were going to, local boy, they'll go, shaka, he got it already.
Well, we do the shaka after we get the award.
Members, are there any other questions for the developer? So, Mr. Carr, thank you very much. Mr. Robinson, Mr. Fong, and everyone who's here.
Thank you very much.
Best wishes. I hope to see it completed if I'm alive.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so after the discussion, we got some testifiers. Okay. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, and now in-person testimony.
Yes, Chair. There's one in
Ms.
Senate.
Young. Go right ahead, Ms. Young. See, the chair was thinking about you that maybe you would qualify for one of these units once it's completed.
Well, I'm gonna do the state test to become an agent. So this is an industry that I'm looking forward to working with.
Okay, can you please confine your remarks to the resolution?
So Angela Melody Young testifying for exemptions for Halim Malia. A functional action plan for housing development in downtown is important. At the state level, CARES testified for funding for development in downtown. And I'm reading a copy of the housing plan from August 2023 proposed by the Office of Housing from the Mayor's Office that has a few focuses on downtown and lists strategies to break down barriers to development. The sense of urgency surrounding the housing shortage impacts the solutions we must formulate to deliver more housing with programs such as 201H, like this project. So programs like 201H, are designed to accommodate low-income and middle-class families. Streamlining the process within the offices for review will help developers to build faster. And the document also talks about one other barrier for delivery of housing, which is funding for buyers to be eligible for home ownership. So it's interconnected topics, down payment for buyers and expediting exemptions for developers such as this project. And as long as a project such as this are not compromising on and are aware of safety and environmental standards, it should be set for approval for exemptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Young? If not, thank you very much for your attendance and your presence. Members, we are now in discussion. The chair would like to recommend that Resolution 24-228 be amended to this committee draft 1 posted on the agenda. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-228, committee draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Let's moving on to the last of the agenda, agenda number 11. Bill 53. This bill will delegate the Department of Planning and Permitting Director the Council's authority to take action on special management area major permits for certain types of development, particularly those developments that were not designated as development prior to the enactment of Act 16, Session Laws of Hawaii of 2020. The bill would also incorporate amendments made by Act 229, Session Laws of Hawaii 2023, which clarified that certain types of improvements, facilities, and incidental structures are not considered to be development. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed committee draft 1 version of the bill. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. And I have also circulated a hand-carried committee draft 1 version of the bill, OCS 2024-0876/9/24/2024 at 12:24 p.m. that is intended to address some of the Department of Planning and Permitting's concerns regarding the posted committee draft 1 version of the bill. The main difference between the posted committee draft 1 and the hand-carried committee draft are that the hand-carried committee draft retains the existing language in the definition of development that referenced the term dwelling unit, and language that larger development consists of 3 or more dwelling units to potentially avoid requiring an SMA permit under circumstances in which an SMA permit currently is not required. And 2, we retain the existing language in the revised ordinance of Honolulu, section 25-5.3, parentheses A, relating to environmental disclosures. Specifically, and for the purpose public transparency, the proposed hand-carried committee draft 1 makes the following amendments. A, in section 4 of the bill, it amends the revised ordinance of Honolulu, 25-5.3C, to resolve an internal inconsistency between it and subsection A regarding the Department of Planning and Permitting Director's authority to allow special management area major permits to be processed concurrently with the preparation of the applicable environmental disclosure documents. 2, we amend the revised ordinance Honolulu 25-5.3I to reformat the subsection into subdivisions and to clarify that the subdivision is applicable only when a special management area major permit is required or the development. And 3, we amend and re-alphabetize revised ordinance of Honolulu 25-5.3J to provide that the council is the approving authority for any development that is not subject to the Department of Planning and Permitting's approving authority pursuant to 25-53I. And finally, we will make miscellaneous and technical non-substantive amendments. At this time, may we call upon the director, Don Apuna? Oh, Liz is here. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Elizabeth Krieger, here for DPP. Thank you for taking this bill up today. I'm available for any questions. Like you said, we had some concerns on the original CD1. We've reviewed the OCS CD1 that you just specified, and that one has addressed our concerns. So we support that version.
Okay, thank you. The objective was to see how we could try to take some of these SMA resolutions that do not have to go through the council, but administratively attached to the department. Like the single-family dwelling homes, those type that we saw today, SMA. Would you folks want to consider doing what we're doing today and incorporating all of the applications versus separating? Am I correct, Liz?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I was telling the members that we're trying to dichotomize or split the single-family dwelling homes to what may be other, that larger, duplex, not duplexes, but ADUs, et cetera, other units, so that we don't have to address it, but they could address it administratively. And that was it. Yeah, Chair Waters.
Thank you. Reading the bill, it looks like on page 3, 4, and 5, there's 21 different exemptions that we would give DPP the authority rather than us voting on it. But just looking at the numerous SMU permit applications that we did today, none of those would qualify for any of these exemptions. Is that correct?
The exemptions that you're referring to are exemptions in state law that are just not considered development. So those projects that are listed as not development don't require an SMA permit unless they otherwise are likely to have cumulative impacts or substantive effect. So those types of things like repair, work on utilities, that kind of stuff is exempt.
It's already exempt.
That's right.
Okay, so why is it in statute or in ordinance?
The way Chapter 25 functions is to take what is in Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 205A, and then it was brought into Revised Ordinances of Honolulu several decades ago, and we mostly just straight up copy exactly what's in 205A. Under Ordinance 23-4 that was adopted last year, we went through the process of trying to clarify those points where the state law is quite broad to specify, or I guess I say we, but what was adopted by the City Council specified exactly where how the city and county is interpreting those areas that have a lot of flexibility. So the definition changed a little bit from what is in 205A, but to provide clarity for the community and for the council.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilwoman Kiaina.
Chair, I do see the need for us to consider what you just said, but I'm just concerned about the timing of the consideration. We just went through a slew of complicated SMA projects, as well as the 201H project and some extensions. And I just think this would be better suited as an informational briefing so that we could more fully educate ourselves on the overall SMA project and some of the things that we're considering today. And so I don't have any questions, but I guess I'm concerned about moving this forward.
Okay, that's fine. Councilwoman Cordero, your thoughts? It's really trying to see how we could facilitate the educational process. But I'll take, Vice Chair's thoughts very seriously. Okay. That's it. We'll have to take other testimony first. Okay. So, Madam Chair, any remote testifiers? No? Okay. In-person testimony? No? Okay. So at this point in time, members, we are in discussion. The chair would like to recommend that we just postpone this measure until time, certain. And we'll try to get it done by December for this particular measure. I'll give you folks a heads up. Okay. So that's it for today, right, guy? Okay. Are there any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. It has been postponed to a time certain date for let's look at it at December. Thank you. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your folks' patience today. It's a long one.